Chapter 1250. In the small house, the abbot looked at Yi Xian. "Didn't you say that you wouldn't care?" Yi Xian smiled wryly. He went to the fifth dimension. If he didn't go to the fifth dimension, then there was no need to care. But if he went to the fifth dimension, then there was only one explanation. He was definitely going to target Yi Xian. Yi Xian continued, "Abbot, I feel that this is our chance. First, the Pope is fighting with those above. We must kill the Pope before those above and take the study from him. Secondly, we can't let Jianghu and the others take away this bookstore. Otherwise, we will fall into a passive position again." The abbot was silent. In truth, he wanted to ignore it for now and let the Pope and Jianghu and the others kill each other. But he was also afraid that the study would fall into the hands of Jianghu and the others. It was as Yi Xian had said. If that happened, then they would fall into a passive position again. When he thought of this, the abbot suddenly looked at the monk. "Gather the ascetics, we are going to the fifth dimension." The monk put his palms together and bowed slightly, then turned and left. The abbot looked at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, let's go." Yi Xian nodded and stood up to leave. Even though he was confident in the fifth dimension's current strength, if a powerful warrior like the Pope played dirty, then the fifth dimension would definitely suffer heavy losses. Very soon, the abbot left the ancient temple with the prefect elder and the 8 ascetics. The people the ancient temple brought out were all powerful warriors of the upper level of self-release realm. In the fifth dimension, the Pope arrived in the sky above Shaman City. The moment he appeared, he slammed his palm down on the city. Boom! A powerful force swept down from the sky above Shaman City. At that moment, a ray of golden light shot into the sky from Shaman City and crashed into the powerful force. Boom! The moment the two forces came into contact, the entire sky trembled and an invisible wave of air rippled outwards. The world trembled. In the air, the Pope looked down. Below him stood a monk with prayer beads. The ancient temple's Jiwu. Jiwu was the preaching monk of the ancient temple. His strength could be ranked in the top 3 of the ancient temple. Facing the Pope, he was not afraid at all. The Pope glared at consciousness. How could you all be so stupid? In his opinion, the ancient temple's decision to help Yi Xian was foolish, because it was the same as giving Yi Xian a chance to grow. Once Yi Xian matured, who could keep him in check? And this time, the reason why he came to the fifth dimension was because he felt that Yi Xian had framed him. Because he really could not think of anyone else who would frame him. Who would benefit the most from the internal strife between him and Jianghu? Naturally, it was Yi Xian. Therefore, he came to the fifth dimension. At this time, Jianghu and the others continued to stay in the sky. Jianghu and the others directly sealed off the Pope's area of space. Jianghu glared at the Pope. "Pope, hand over the library and we can pretend that nothing has happened." The Pope shook his head with a smile. "Brother Jiang, you keep saying that the library is in my hands. I want to ask, if it really is in my hands, why would I return to the Bloodshed God Palace?" Jianghu looked at the Pope. "You say that someone framed you. Let me ask you, who framed you? Is it Yi Xian?" The Pope said in a low voice, "It's him." Jianghu angrily said, "Bullshit. I've already sent people to investigate. That Yi Xian has always been in the ancient temple. Why would he frame you? Moreover, if he had that kind of strength, why would he need to frame you? Wouldn't it be better to just kill us?" The Pope's face darkened. "Brother Jiang, have you ever thought about why I would steal that Tao scripture? Take it for myself? It's not like I can open it, so why would I take it for myself?" Jianghu was silent. Needless to say, he didn't think that the Pope was that stupid. If it really was the other party's doing, he would never return to the Bloodshed God Palace. At this moment, a voice came from behind them. "Perhaps you found a way to open the library." Everyone turned to see a group of people standing in front of them. It was the abbot of the ancient temple and Yi Xian. The Pope stared at Yi Xian. "Was it you?" Yi Xian smiled. Pope, you're saying that I'm framing you, right? The Pope stared at Yi Xian. Besides you, who else could it be? Yi Xian smiled. Pope, you're too shameless. You're still trying to frame me at a time like this. Saying so, he looked at Jianghu. Pavilion Master Jiang, in my opinion, there might be someone else behind the Pope. Someone else. Jianghu narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Yi Xian sternly said, think about it. How could one person disappear right under your noses? And if it's someone he doesn't know, Pavilion Master Jiang, who do you think could make him disappear without a trace? So, in my opinion, there's definitely someone working together with him to put on this show. The reason he returned to the Bloodshed God Palace was to confuse you, to make you think that the library is in my, Yi Xian's hands. Then, you'll come and fight me, Yi Xian. Saying so, he looked at the Pope. Pope, this is a brilliant plan. Truly brilliant. The Pope stared at Yi Xian, his eyes like knives. Beside him, Jianghu looked at the Pope with a dark expression. Yi Xian said, Pavilion Master Jiang, I think there's someone else behind this. Jianghu looked at the Pope. Who is it? The Pope angrily said, Jianghu, do you really believe this kid's words? Jianghu's lips curled into a mocking smile. Do you think I believe you? The Pope was so angry that he laughed. Jianghu, you really are an idiot. Jianghu narrowed his eyes. I'll give you one last chance. The Pope was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, I suggest we capture him and slowly interrogate him. We'll definitely be able to find out the whereabouts of the library. Jianghu looked at Yi Xian. You don't think the library is with him? Yi Xian nodded. As I said, he doesn't have the ability to disappear without a trace. Someone must have helped him. And the reason he appeared is to confuse us, to make us kill each other. Speaking up to this point, his expression became extremely solemn. If I'm not wrong, the person behind him must have already opened the study room and must be cultivating now. And he is trying to delay us and buy time for the person behind him. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Jianghu and the others' expressions changed. It was completely possible. Jianghu looked at the Pope. Who are you working for? The Pope was silent. He suddenly realized that no matter what he said, no one would believe him. Because he had disappeared together with the library. Just this point alone, even if he jumped into the heavenly river, he wouldn't be able to wash himself clean. The Pope suddenly looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Yi Xian, I don't hate you. Really, because you and I are opponents. No matter how you frame me, it's only right. But... At this point, he looked at Jianghu and the others. You really are stupid. Yi Xian blinked his eyes. Jianghu suddenly said, attack. With that, he and the self-release experts behind him were about to attack. At this time, the Pope suddenly smiled. Jianghu, let me tell you, the person behind me is not someone you can offend. Hearing this, Jianghu stopped. He looked at the Pope. Who is it? Yi Xian looked at the Pope. This guy was starting to create something out of nothing. He could roughly guess who was framing the Pope. Besides Mu Niannian, he couldn't think of anyone else who would play such a dirty trick. The Pope looked at Jianghu and smiled. Who else do you think? Jianghu fell silent for a moment before he said, the Dao village. The Pope roared with laughter. Jianghu, you're finally smart. You're right, it's the Dao village. Yi Xian was speechless. Jianghu spoke solemnly, Pope, isn't it good for you to work together with us? The Pope shook his head. All of you are too stupid. Useless teammates. Jianghu stared fixedly at the Pope. Kill. The Pope roared with laughter. Come. Idiots. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly slapped his stomach with both hands. When they witnessed this scene, the expressions of Jianghu and the others instantly changed drastically, and the expressions of the abbot and the others changed drastically as well. The abbot directly grabbed Yi Xian and retreated madly with the others. As for Jianghu and the others, they wanted to retreat as well, but it was too late. He had detonated himself. No one had expected that the Pope would actually choose to detonate himself. Bang! A world-shaking explosion resounded, and then a powerful force swept through the sky. In an instant, the entire sky was plunged into pitch-black darkness. How terrifying was the detonation of a top-rate expert like the Pope? Amongst the dozens of self-release realm experts that had charged at the Pope, 4 of them had perished on the spot. While the others hadn't perished, most of them were heavily injured. Jianghu's countenance was slightly pale. Obviously, he'd been heavily injured as well. Yi Xian was quite shocked as he gazed at the pitch-black space before him. The Pope had actually chosen to detonate himself. What a ruthless fellow. The abbot hadn't expected that the Pope would detonate himself as well. That was too ruthless. Jianghu and the others had even more unsightly expressions on their faces. They hadn't expected that the Pope would actually choose to detonate himself. That was no different from playing with his life. Actually, Jianghu blamed himself for being stupid. In such a situation, the Pope definitely had no chance of survival. Since it was impossible for them to survive, then they definitely had to drag one of them down with them. As if he'd thought of something, Jianghu hurriedly grabbed the spot where the Pope had been earlier. However, it was completely empty there. Jianghu's expression was incomparably unsightly. Clearly, that study was not in the Pope's hands. At this time, a self-release realm expert gave Jianghu a meaningful glance. Jianghu turned to look at Yi Xian and the others with a wary expression. They were currently heavily injured. If Yi Xian and the others attacked at this time, they would be in a dangerous situation. And Yi Xian suddenly pointed with his finger. Over a dozen bottles of medicinal pills landed in front of Jianghu and the others. Everyone, these are healing panaceas. Everyone, heal your injuries first. Don't worry, Yi Xian, will never take advantage of others when they are down. Jianghu looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian smiled. Everyone, I really won't take advantage of others when they are down. Moreover, none of you have a study room on you. If we attack you, wouldn't we be letting others feel happy? Pavilion Master Jiang, I feel that for now, we are standing on the same boat. What do you think? After a moment of silence, Jianghu said, Young Master Ye's words are reasonable. P.S. Asking for tickets. Chapter 1251. Jianghu did not hate Yi Xian as much as the Pope. In his heart, the study house was the most important. Although he also felt that Yi Xian was a great threat, the most important thing now was to obtain the study house, not to fight Yi Xian. Especially now that Yi Xian had joined hands with the ancient temple. The Tao world no longer had any advantage. Jianghu cupped his fists at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, we will meet again. With that, he turned and left. At this moment, they naturally did not dare to stay here for long. They were still afraid of Yi Xian and the ancient temple. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, Pavilion Master Jiang, is this Tao village very powerful? Jianghu hesitated, then said, very mysterious. In terms of strength, it might be above my Immortal Pavilion and God Palace. Yi Xian said solemnly, then what do you plan to do? Jianghu was silent. The study house was in the hands of the Tao village, so they naturally would not give it up. However, this Tao village was not God Palace. Yi Xian suddenly said, Pavilion Master Jiang, I feel that we should still be careful. Jianghu looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi also needs to be careful. With that, he turned and left with the crowd. Soon, the Tao world experts left the 5th dimension. At this time, the ancient temple's abbot suddenly said, if we had attacked just now, Yi Xian smiled. Could we have destroyed them? The ancient temple's abbot shook his head. But we could have killed more than 10 self-release realm experts. Yi Xian said softly, it would have been meaningless. After all, the study house is not in their hands. The ancient temple's abbot frowned. Is the study house really in the hands of the Dao village? Yi Xian said seriously, are you doubting the Pope? The ancient temple's abbot shook his head. I just feel that this matter is a little strange. Logically, the Pope would not sacrifice himself for the Dao village. This does not make sense. Yi Xian smiled. Perhaps there is a reason we do not know. The abbot of the ancient temple was silent. Yi Xian walked over and looked around before he said, Abbot, do you think there was someone here just now? The ancient temple's abbot frowned slightly. He put his palms together and soon, the space around him shook violently. A moment later, the abbot said solemnly, there was someone here just now. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. Someone's here. The ancient temple's abbot said, looks like this matter is a little complicated. Yi Xian smiled and said, there's nothing complicated about it. Abbot, all we need to do now is wait. I believe that it won't be long before the study room appears. The abbot looked at Yi Xian, this old monk believes in young Master Yi. Yi Xian laughed and said, Abbot of the ancient temple, I need to go back for a period of time. Let's go back to the ancient temple first. I will come to the ancient temple at that time. The abbot hesitated for a moment before he said, let the sadhus stay here. That's more peaceful. As if they thought of something, they added, it's not to keep an eye on young Master Yi. If you don't want to, I can bring them back with me. Yi Xian smiled and said, how could that be? Let them stay here. When the time comes, I will return to the ancient temple with them. The ancient temple's abbot put his palms together. He took out a Buddhist scripture and passed it to Yi Xian, young Master Yi, when you have nothing to do, you can read the Buddhist scriptures to calm your mind. Yi Xian nodded, all right. The ancient temple's abbot nodded slightly before turning around and leaving. Yi Xian looked behind him. Guan Yin had arrived at some point in time. Guan Yin looked at Yi Xian, you've improved? Yi Xian nodded. Guan Yin smiled and said, congratulations. Yi Xian sized up Guan Yin and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes, half-step escape. 1. Guan Yin nodded. Yi Xian smiled and said, that was fast. Needless to say, Guan Yin's innate talent was really high. As expected of the most monstrous genius in the history of the spirit of Nine Yin tribe. Guan Yin shook his head. I still can't win. Yi Xian smiled and said, it's because my physical body is restrained. If it wasn't for that, I might not have been able to win. He wasn't being humble. If not for his body restraining Guan Yin, he might not have been able to defeat Guan Yin. What do you plan to do next? Guan Yin asked softly. Yi Xian smiled and said, development. Guan Yin nodded. This is indeed a good opportunity for us to develop. Yi Xian said, is there anyone in the 5 dimensions who has reached release 1? Guan Yin looked at Yi Xian. Yes. Yi Xian asked, Audiobook? Or Situ? Guan Yin shook his head. Little 7. Little 7. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said, she attained self-release? Guan Yin nodded. Yi Xian was silent. He didn't expect little 7 to be the first to reach release 1 in the 5 dimensions. The youngest release 1? Guan Yin hesitated and then said, little 7 might be different from others. Yi Xian asked, what do you mean? Guan Yin said, I heard Lady Audiobook say that she might be a reincarnator. Reincarnator. Yi Xian was silent. Actually, when he was in the lower realms, he felt that little 7 was abnormal. Especially when little 7's sword could actually merge with the plain-dressed woman's sword. Yi Xian was silent for a moment and then said softly, I hope she doesn't become someone else. Guan Yin nodded. This is what we are worried about. But from the looks of it, little 7 is still normal. Yi Xian nodded. Is she the only one who has reached release 1? Guan Yin shook her head. Arrow, Audiobook, Situ, and Lady An are all in closed-door cultivation. If nothing unexpected happens, they should be able to reach release 1. Yi Xian nodded. What about the formation? Guan Yin said, follow me. With that, she turned and left. Yi Xian followed. After Yi Xian and the others left, a black-clothed man suddenly appeared on the scene. After a moment of silence, the black-clothed man said softly, Pope. Using death to frame my Dao village. Is he crazy? Yi Xian followed Guan Yin to a starry sky. At this time, Old Li had been waiting for a long time. Yi Xian looked at Old Li. Old Li said solemnly, Alliance leader Yi, the power of this formation might not be simple. You must be mentally prepared. Yi Xian smiled. I am already prepared. Old Li nodded, and then he turned around. Depart the formation. As soon as he spoke, the starry sky around them trembled violently, and then countless mysterious golden talismans appeared. At this moment, the entire starry sky was covered by the formation. Yi Xian glanced at the formation and said, Is it strong? Old Li said, Let's give it a try. Yi Xian nodded, drew his sword, and slashed. Hiss! A ray of light tore through the air, and it vanished without a trace as soon as it entered the formation. Yi Xian was slightly surprised. He gazed at Old Li, and Old Li smiled. Spatial shift. We've built a powerful spatial formation within this formation. Any power that enters it will be automatically transferred away by the spatial formation. Currently, the energy of even self-release realm experts can be easily moved away. Yi Xian was quite shocked. Amazing. Old Li clapped his hands, and a golden formation suddenly appeared beneath Yi Xian's feet. Old Li said, That's the core of the formation. Yi Xian glanced at the core of the formation beneath his feet and said, How do I activate it? Old Li turned around and said, Activate it. As soon as he finished speaking, a strand of dazzling golden light suddenly erupted from the formation beneath Yi Xian's feet. A moment later, the golden talismans in the surroundings seemed as if they'd come to life, and boundless energy surged towards Yi Xian. In an instant, a strand of enormous energy filled Yi Xian's body, and it was like a torrent that caused Yi Xian's body to tremble. At this moment, Yi Xian's expression changed. Because he noticed that the energy was converging incessantly towards him, and even though his body was extremely strong, it was still slightly difficult for him to endure. Yi Xian gazed at Old Li, You can stop now. Old Li nodded, and then he clapped his hands lightly. It didn't take long for the golden talismans to fall silent. Yi Xian glanced at his body, and he noticed that the energy within him hadn't vanished. However, it didn't stay within him either, and it was slowly flowing away. Meanwhile, Old Li suddenly said, I asked someone to gather this energy within these talismans in advance. These talismans form a formation, and every single one of them contains an enormous amount of energy. In battle, Alliance Master Yi can draw energy from these talismans and add it to his own strength. It can be said that you're completely capable of relying on this formation to kill an expert like the Sect Master. Yi Xian suddenly said, It still needs to be strengthened. Old Li was stunned, and then he said, It still needs to be strengthened? Yi Xian nodded. Old Li, our enemy isn't just the Dao world, it's the fifth dimension tribulation as well. We have to prepare for the worst when facing that calamity. Old Li spoke in a low voice, but if we continue strengthening it, then young Master Ye's body. Yi Xian smiled, I can endure it. If it was in the past, then he would definitely be unable to endure it. But now, he was completely capable of doing so. Because his current body was the steel Buddhist physique. Old Li thought about it, and then he said, All right. I'll have people continue strengthening this formation. As he spoke, he looked at Guan Yin, Miss Guan, please send more people to strengthen this formation as well. Guan Yin nodded. I'll arrange it. Old Li looked at Yi Xian, Alliance Master Yi, do you have any other requests? Yi Xian thought about it, and then he said, Both of you, you have to remember one thing, and that is that our greatest enemy is the fifth dimension tribulation. So, we have to be prepared for anything. Otherwise, we might all die. Guan Yin nodded, I understand. Old Li nodded, I'll strengthen our formation at all costs. Yi Xian raised his head, and then he said, besides the fifth dimension tribulation, we still have enemies outside. I'll deal with them. Guan Yin nodded, all right. Yi Xian suddenly turned his head and saw a woman slowly walking over. It was Qian Mo. Qian Mo walked in front of Yi Xian. Let's talk in private. Guan Yin said, let's talk. I'm going to busy myself. As she spoke, she and Old Li turned and left. Yi Xian looked at Qian Mo. Miss Qian Mo, is something the matter? Qian Mo said, my bloodline has broken through its shackles. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he smiled, that's a good thing. Qian Mo glanced at Yi Xian, but didn't say anything. Yi Xian said, if there's anything, just say it. Qian Mo suddenly said, do you want to dual cultivate? Yi Xian was dumbfounded, huh? Chapter 1252. You want to dual cultivate? Yi Xian was dumbfounded. What was going on? Qian Mo was expressionless. Why? You don't want to? Yi Xian hesitated and said, Miss Qian Mo. Qian Mo shrugged. Although my bloodline has broken through, it can still help me grow. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? Qian Mo said indifferently, because the power of your bloodline is stronger than mine. Yi Xian fell silent. Qian Mo frowned. Are you going to do it or not? Yi Xian had a strange expression. Miss Qian Mo, are you using me? Qian Mo said coldly, am I at a disadvantage? Yi Xian was about to speak when Qian Mo suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's shoulder. Stop talking nonsense. Hurry up. With that, she disappeared with Yi Xian. Yi Xian was speechless. Miss Qian Mo, I am a person with principles, why are you so stubborn? Dao World. After Jianghu and the others returned to the Dao World, they did not go to the Dao village immediately. Instead, they started to heal. They did not dare to underestimate the Dao village. The Dao village was the most mysterious place, and the reason for that was because no one knew how strong they were. Unknown. Therefore, Jianghu did not act rashly this time. However, he did not think of giving up. After all, he had almost 52 self-release realm experts standing behind him. More and more people came to him for the Dao scripture. It could be said that he was not afraid of anyone. There were many people. On this day, a woman arrived at the celestial pavilion. She wore a long green dress and her long hair fluttered in the wind. She held a black folding fan in her hand. The woman walked to the front of the celestial pavilion. At this moment, the pavilion master, Jianghu, appeared before her. Jianghu looked at the woman. From the Dao village? The woman nodded. Greetings, Pavilion Master Jiang. Jianghu sneered. The Dao village has a good trick. Li Qing shook his head. I'm here to clarify with Pavilion Master Jiang that the study is not in the hands of our Dao village. Jianghu frowned. It's not in the hands of the Dao village? Li Qing nodded. Indeed, it's not in the hands of my Dao village. As for why the Pope said that, it was probably to stir up conflict between my Dao village and all of you. Jianghu looked at Li Qing. He used his life to stir up conflict between us and the Dao village? It can't be, right? Li Qing smiled and said, this is also what we are confused about, because our Dao village has never had any grudges with the Pope. Jianghu said calmly, so? Li Qing smiled and said, Pavilion Master Jiang, we're just here to clarify things. As for whether Pavilion Master Jiang believes it or not, it's up to Pavilion Master Jiang. With that, she turned around and left. At this time, Jianghu suddenly said, do you think I believe you? Li Qing stopped in her tracks and looked at Jianghu. Pavilion Master Jiang, a brain is a good thing. I hope you have it too. With that, she turned around and left. Suddenly, Jianghu made his move. Li Qing didn't even turn his head as a green light flashed across the field. Bang! A muffled explosion resounded as Jianghu returned to where he stood earlier. At this moment, Li Qing had vanished. Jianghu had an extremely solemn expression on his face. Meanwhile, Mo Dao appeared by Jianghu's side, and he spoke solemnly, "Pavilion Master, there really is something fishy about all of this." Jianghu spoke solemnly, "What do you mean?" Mo Dao thought for a moment and said, "Firstly, the Pope's death is quite strange. Logically speaking, it's impossible for him to sacrifice himself for the Dao village. Not to mention sacrificing himself for the Dao village, he wouldn't even do that for his own son. Secondly, when I thought about all this time, I noticed that the Devil Dao clans are gone. Secondly, the imperial clans are gradually declining. Thirdly, the God Palace is gone. In less than 2 months, only our Dao village and our Dao world remain. Now, there's conflict between us and the Dao village." Jianghu frowned slightly. "You mean that someone wants the various powers of our Dao world to kill each other?" Mo Dao nodded, "Yes." Jianghu spoke solemnly, "Who?" Mo Dao hesitated for a moment before he said, "I think it's the ancient temple or Yi Xian. This is because chaos in our Dao world is the most beneficial to them." Yi Xian. An ancient temple. Jianghu shook his head. The ancient temple and Yi Xian do not have the ability to silently take away the Pope and the study in front of us. Demon Dao said in a low voice, "This is also what I've been wondering about." Jianghu said softly, "Ever since this Dao scripture appeared, this world has become more and more difficult for me to understand." Mo Dao fell silent. Jianghu suddenly said, "Actually, my intuition is telling me that I should stop here and not think about the Dao scripture anymore. Because the more I think about it, the more uneasy I feel." Mo Dao said solemnly, "Is Pavilion Master going to give up?" Jianghu shook his head. "If I give up, I will stop at the self-release realm for the rest of my life." The Dao scripture was his hope. The only hope to rush above self-release. Although his intuition told him that continuing to search would be dangerous, he still did not want to give up. Men die for wealth, and birds die for food. If he didn't fight now, he could only wait for death. Jianghu suddenly said, "Speak, who is most likely to have the Dao scripture?" Demon Dao said in a low voice, "First, Yi Xian and the ancient temple. Second, the Dao village. Third, an unknown faction." Jianghu frowned. "Unknown faction?" Mo Dao nodded. "Yes. Pavilion Master should know that the Dao world is not the only existence in this universe." Jianghu fell silent. Mo Dao said, "We can continue to search for the Dao scripture, but we cannot be rash. In my opinion, the Pope blew himself up. It is highly likely that he was framed by someone. Because he had no reason to risk his life for someone else. Even the Dao village would not make the Pope risk his life for them. If he didn't do it for someone else, then there is only one explanation: he was framed." Jianghu said in a soft voice, "At the time, he had nowhere to go, so he wanted to frame the Dao village before he died, so that we could fight the Dao village to the death." Mo Dao nodded. "That is completely possible." Jianghu fell silent. Mo Dao said, "Pavilion Master, the most important thing for us to do now is to investigate who took the Pope away. Apart from that, we also need to investigate the Dao village and the ancient temple to see if they have the Dao scripture. Also, we need to ally with the remaining factions, such as the Emperor clans and the Demonic Path clans. We need to gather all the power we can to strengthen ourselves." Didn't Yi Xian set up a fifth dimension alliance in the fifth dimension? We can also set up a Dao World Alliance. Jianghu nodded. "All right. We'll do as you say." Mo Dao nodded, then turned and left. Jianghu looked at the horizon, a trace of worry in his eyes. Who was messing with the Dao world? After Li Qing left the Immortal Pavilion, she came to the depths of a mountain range. There was a small village in the depths of the mountain range. The village was surrounded by steep mountains, and from time to time, red-crowned cranes flew out. Dao village. Outsiders knew very little about the Dao village, because the people of the Dao village basically did not go out. After Li Qing returned to the Dao village, an old man appeared in front of her as soon as she arrived. This person was the Dao village chief, Li Er. Li Qing bowed slightly. "Chief." Li Er nodded. "How is it?" Li Qing shook her head. "They don't believe it." Li Er said softly, "The Pope wanted to cause conflict between them and us before he died." "What a vicious heart." Li Qing said solemnly, "What we need to do now is find out who exactly has the Dao scripture." Li Er nodded. "The Devil Master is already investigating." "The Devil Master?" Li Qing blinked. Qing blinked, "She's awake?" Li Er nodded. "Follow me." Li Er led Li Qing to a thatched cottage. There was a black-robed woman in the cottage. She wore a black robe and had a head full of red hair. She looked rather strange. Before her was a divination platform with 2 tortoise shells on it. The woman muttered something, and the space before her trembled slightly. After an unknown period of time, the red-haired woman suddenly picked up the tortoise shells. Boundless heaven and earth, move the universal order. Very quickly, the space here suddenly trembled. Before long, a red thread flew out from the divination platform. It didn't take long for the red thread to travel through space and arrive in a certain starry sky. A woman was roasting fish in that starry sky. It was Mu Ninian. Suddenly, Mu Ninian raised her head. She looked not too far away and gently blocked it with her right hand. In an instant, the red thread was imprisoned in that space. Mu Ninian looked at the red thread and smiled. "Interesting. It's actually the legendary divination technique." Ling, who was next to Mu Ninian, asked, "What's divination technique?" Mu Ninian said, "It's a very ancient technique. Just like divination, it's something from a very, very long time ago. I didn't expect that someone in this world would still know it." Ling asked, "Did she find it?" Mu Ninian smiled. "Yes. However, she underestimated me. This level of divination technique can't touch me." As she said that, she gently pulled her fingers together. Soon, the red thread flew in another direction. Under Mu Ninian's control, the red thread arrived in front of the Dao world's barrier of the universe. Mu Ninian retracted her hand and the corners of her mouth curled up mischievously. Dao village. The red-haired woman in the house suddenly opened her eyes and frowned deeply. Li Er asked, "What's wrong?" The red-haired woman replied in a deep voice, "In front of the Dao world's barrier of the universe." Upon hearing that, Li Er's expression changed slightly. "It's them?" The red-haired woman shook her head. "I don't know." As she said that, she looked at the 2 tortoise shells in front of her. The tortoise shells were in a mess, which had never happened before. Li Er asked, "What's wrong?" The red-haired woman was silent for a long time. "There are 2 possibilities. First, the book house is on the other side of the universe. Second, someone changed my divination technique." Li Er asked in a deep voice, "Is it possible that it's the second possibility?" The red-haired woman nodded. "It's possible. However, if the other party really has this kind of strength." A trace of worry flashed in her eyes. "That's too scary." In the starry sky, Mu Ninian was still grilling fish. It was very fragrant. At this moment, the space in front of her suddenly trembled violently. Immediately, a phantom image suddenly appeared in front of Mu Ninian. The phantom image was wearing a white robe and a square crown. He was holding a white ruler in his hand. Mu Ninian looked at the phantom image. The phantom image bowed respectfully. "The Prime Minister of the Godly Kingdom of Shimi, Fong Tangshir, greets His Holiness." The corner of Mu Ninian's mouth raised slightly. "His Holiness?" Fong Tangshir bowed again. "It's an honorific title above void release ones." Mu Ninian blinked. "I'm not above void release ones. It's true. I'm very weak." Fong Tangshir bowed respectfully again. "His Holiness, please don't joke around." Mu Niannian picked up the grilled fish in front of her, took a bite, and then smiled. What's the matter? Fong Tangshi bowed again. His Holiness, His Majesty wants to invite His Holiness to the godly kingdom of Shumi as the state preceptor. Mu Niannian looked at Fong Tangshi. They want to come over and seize the study house. Fong Tangshi nodded. Yes. His Holiness, please. Mu Niannian shook her head. Before I die, they are not allowed to come over. Fong Tangshi was silent. The corner of Mu Niannian's mouth raised slightly. Do you want to fight? I, Mu Niannian, am invincible in Void Release Ones. Above Void Release Ones, any realm, with the exception of 3 swords, 1 for 1. May I ask, what realm is His Majesty? P.S. Do you want to vote? I want any vote. May I ask, how many votes do you have? Chapter 1253. In the starry sky, Fong Tangshi was silent. In truth, when they found out that Tao scripture had reappeared, they wanted to come over. However, they were afraid. It was because of this woman. This woman was above self-release. Moreover, her above self-release was different from others, she was truly above self-release. In other words, she was above self-release and had truly surpassed the Grand Tao. This was self-release without any excess. To put it bluntly, dozens of fake self-release realm experts could not compare to a true self-release realm expert. The difference between excess and no excess was too big. At this moment, Mu Niannian suddenly smiled. I don't have much time left. Fong Tangshi looked at Mu Niannian. Mu Niannian smiled, just 1 or 2 years. After I die, you can come over if you want. However, before I die, I will kill every one of you who comes over. Fong Tangshi softly said, Lord, take care. With that, he retreated. At this moment, Ling Er's voice suddenly rang out, do you really only have 2 years left? Her voice was trembling. Mu Niannian smiled, silly girl, I lied to him, hee hee. With that, she turned around with a trace of worry in her eyes. In the 5th dimension. At this moment, Yi Xian and Qian Mo were having sex in a small dark room. It had to be said that Yi Xian was very passive. This was because Qian Mo was too proactive. The two took a long time. In the beginning, the two did not focus on cultivation. Only later did they start to use dual cultivation techniques. Yi Xian found that this dual cultivation technique was very useful, especially for his bloodline. Of course, Qian Mo obtained even more benefits. This was because Yi Xian's bloodline power was much stronger than hers. Just like this, the two continued until the 2nd day. On the morning of the 2nd day, when the sun rose, the two ended. Yi Xian put on his clothes and came out of the room. Not far away, Qian Mo sat on a rock. In front of her was an ocean. Yi Xian walked to Qian Mo's side. Qian Mo asked softly, what are your plans now? Yi Xian lightly touched the fragments on his chest and said softly, protect the 5-dimensional universe. Qian Mo turned to look at Yi Xian and smiled, are you that great? Yi Xian shook his head. Responsibility. Right now, the entire 5th dimension was following Yi Xian. Moreover, his friends were also here, so he was duty-bound to take care of them. Qian Mo looked at Yi Xian. That scripture is still in your hands, right? Yi Xian shook his head. No, but I know who has it. Qian Mo asked, whose hands? Yi Xian was silent. Qian Mo smiled and said, I'm asking too much. With that, she got up to leave. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, it's with Nian Nian. Mu Niannian. The reason why he knew this was not a guess, but because he could feel the presence of the study room. The study room had its own spirit. Qian Mo said solemnly, it really is her. In her opinion, other than that woman, no one could take away the study room in front of dozens of self-release realm experts without a sound. That woman was even more terrifying than she had imagined. Yi Xian suddenly said, "What about you? What are your plans?" Xian Mo said softly, "I want to revive the family, but it will be very difficult. Because the bloodline of the family members has become very thin." "Unless?" Yi Xian asked. "Unless what?" Xian Mo looked at Yi Xian. "Unless I have a child with you." Yi Xian looked at Xian Mo and did not say anything. Xian Mo smiled and said, "Don't be angry, I will not have a child with you. We are already fated to be together, I do not want a child to inherit this fate. This is my bottom line." Yi Xian walked in front of Xian Mo and said solemnly, "No matter what you think of our relationship, I just want to say that if you need any help, just say it. Of course, if I need help, I will also find you. Is that okay?" Xian Mo looked at Yi Xian for a long time. "Okay." Yi Xian smiled and was about to speak when Xian Mo suddenly said, "Will we develop feelings for each other after a long time?" Yi Xian was speechless. This sentence was very problematic. After a while, the two left, and Xian Mo returned to the Tao world. After Yi Xian dealt with the matters of the fifth dimension, he came to the ancient temple. He had to borrow the power of the ancient temple to deal with the Tao world. It could be said that he and the ancient temple were using each other. As for who would benefit in the end, it was still unknown. Inside the ancient temple, Yi Xian and the abbot sat opposite each other. Beside him was a female monk, Hui Xian. During his time in the ancient temple, Yi Xian had discovered that Hui Xian was the ancient temple's focus on nurturing. 2 hours later, the abbot put away the Buddhist scriptures and said, "Hui Xian, you can leave." Hui Xian put her palms together and retreated. The abbot looked at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, according to our investigation, Jianghu and the others did not fight the Tao village to the death." Yi Xian said with a smile, "That means they might feel that something is wrong." The abbot nodded. "Young Master Yi, in your opinion, who has the Tao scripture?" Yi Xian thought about it and said, "If it is not the Tao village, then it is in the godly kingdom of Shumi." The abbot looked at Yi Xian and did not say anything. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Master, don't tell me you think it is in my hands?" The abbot shook his head. "Not at all. When the Tao world was in trouble, young Master Yi was in the ancient temple." Yi Xian nodded and said with a smile, "It is good that Master does not suspect me." The abbot suddenly said, "Could it be the work of the person behind young Master Yi?" Yi Xian's heart trembled. The abbot had guessed in this direction. What he was most afraid of was the Tao world and the ancient temple guessing in this direction. If that was the case, everyone would focus on him, Yi Xian. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and said with a smile, "Abbot, what do you think?" The abbot looked at Yi Xian and did not say anything. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Master, there is someone behind me, and that is the plain-dressed woman. But she is not in the Tao world or the six-dimensional universe, right?" The abbot shook his head. "There is someone behind young Master Yi." Yi Xian asked, "Who?" The abbot said in a deep voice, "Fifth dimension Tendo." Yi Xian blinked and said, "Could it be that she took the Tao scripture?" The abbot looked at Yi Xian and did not say anything. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Master, what do you think the strength of the fifth dimension Tendo is?" The abbot said softly, "At least the extreme self-release realm." The extreme self-release realm. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Then do you think that she can take away the study room in front of dozens of self-release realm experts?" The abbot was silent. Yi Xian said, "Master, what do you think of my relationship with the fifth dimension Tendo?" The abbot shook his head. "I don't know." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Isn't she using me? She wants to obtain the Tao scripture from me." The abbot hesitated and said, "What about the plain-dressed woman? Is she also trying to obtain the Tao scripture from young Master Yi?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "Abbot, do you know the true strength of the plain-dressed woman?" The abbot thought about it and said, "At least the extreme self-release realm." Yi Xian asked, Can she take away the study room in front of dozens of self-release realm experts? The abbot was silent. Actually, in his opinion, this was not something a self-release realm expert could do. However, the study room had disappeared. Who was the one behind this? The abbot sighed. This matter was becoming more and more complicated. The ancient temple's abbot looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, you said before that if you reach self-release realm, you will be able to find the Tao scripture. Is that true? Yi Xian nodded. If I reach self-release realm, I will be able to sense the location of the study room. After all, it has recognized me as its master. But right now, I am too weak, I cannot sense it. The ancient temple's abbot said in a deep voice. Young Master Yi is not joking? Yi Xian said, I am serious. The ancient temple's abbot nodded. Then let us help young Master Yi break through to self-release realm. Yi Xian said, I have just stabilized my realm, now that I am breaking through. The ancient temple's abbot clasped his hands together. Young Master Yi, don't worry, we won't act recklessly. With our help, young Master Yi's realm will not be a problem. It is just that, after young Master Yi reaches self-release realm, this old monk hopes that young Master Yi can sense the location of the study room. That study room is really important to my ancient temple. Yi Xian clasped his hands together. A monk does not lie. The ancient temple's abbot's eyelids twitched. What kind of monk are you? This person is really a devil. Yi Xian said again, Master, forgive me for being blunt, but you should have investigated me and know what kind of person I, Yi Xian, am. I, Yi Xian, have never sold out my allies, right? Moreover, I have never taken the initiative to harm anyone, right? The ancient temple's abbot was silent. Needless to say, they had investigated Yi Xian. In their investigation, Yi Xian's character was indeed not bad. Just like this time, Yi Xian could have left the fifth dimension, but Yi Xian did not do so. Instead, he stayed to resist the fifth dimension calamity with the fifth dimension. To put it simply, Yi Xian was a person who valued friendship and righteousness. Thinking of this, the ancient temple's abbot clasped his hands together. Young Master Yi, no matter what, I hope we can cooperate as soon as possible. Yi Xian nodded. I hope so too. The ancient temple's abbot said, Young Master Yi, you are now at the origin returning realm shattering realm, and during this period of time, you have been cultivating Buddhist Dharma in my ancient temple. Your realm has stabilized, and now you are trying to reach self-release realm. Yi Xian suddenly said, Master, isn't it half-step self-release realm? The ancient temple's abbot shook his head. Half-step self-release realm is a saying that one cannot reach self-release realm. To put it simply, the limit of origin returning realm shattering realm is half-step self-release realm. Because there is no way to reach self-release realm, I changed it to a nicer sounding name, which is half-step self-release realm. As for you, there is no need for half-step self-release realm, you can directly reach self-release realm. Yi Xian smiled and said, All right. The abbot stood up. Young Master Yi, follow me. Yi Xian nodded and followed. Not long later, the abbot brought Yi Xian to the martial arts hall. Ji Ju was also there. The ancient temple's abbot took out a golden box. He opened the box, and inside the box was a white pill that was very pure. Yi Xian was a little surprised. Master, this is? The ancient temple's abbot said, Tao pill, it can strengthen young Master Yi's physique, allowing young Master Yi to better reach self-release realm. Yi Xian said solemnly, self-release realm, isn't it said to transcend the grand Tao? Can you just eat pills? The ancient temple's abbot shook his head. No. Later, I will ask the senior monks of the past to help young Master Yi, and let them bring young Master Yi to the virtual Buddha realm, so that young Master Yi can comprehend it. As for whether it succeeds or not, it will all depend on young Master Yi's own luck, Chapter 1254. Self-release. Yi Xian was silent. If he could reach self-release, at that time, the situation would be completely different. Because at that time, he would be able to continue using the world prison pagoda. Right now, the World Prison Pagoda was still his greatest trump card. It could be said that once he reached self-release, he would undergo a qualitative change. The ancient temple's abbot brought Yi Xian to a hall in the martial arts hall. Inside the hall, there was a Buddha statue. The abbot respectfully bowed to the Buddha statue and then turned to look at Jianghu. The latter slightly nodded, clasped his hands together and retreated. The ancient temple's abbot looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, whether or not you can succeed will depend on your own luck. After saying that, he also retreated. After the abbot retreated, Yi Xian discovered that the space in front of him suddenly became illusory. Outside the hall, Jianghu solemnly said, "Abbot, are you really going to help young Master Yi reach self-release?" The abbot nodded. Jianghu wanted to say something but hesitated. The abbot softly said, "You want to say that once he reaches self-release, he will be a great threat to us, right?" Jianghu nodded. "He is a heavenly genius. Right now, he can already fight against an upper self-release powerhouse. If he reaches self-release, I'm afraid an ordinary upper self-release powerhouse will not be his opponent." The abbot said, "I know." Jianghu said, "Abbot, do you have other plans?" The abbot turned to look at the hall and softly said, "If he is really willing to share the Tao scripture with us, then all problems will not exist." Jianghu asked, "What if he is not willing?" The abbot clasped his hands together. "We can only gamble on his character." Inside the hall, the current Yi Xian was already in a starry sky. Around him, there were 6 illusory monks. The 6 monks were looking at him. Yi Xian clasped his hands together and slightly bowed. "Greetings, seniors." At this time, a monk in front of him suddenly said, "You are not from my ancient temple." Yi Xian looked at the monk. "In your eyes, master, is there a distinction between inside and outside the temple?" The monk looked at Yi Xian. After a moment, he smiled. "Interesting. Are you going to discuss Buddhism with me?" Yi Xian asked, "Master, in your heart, your dharma is higher than mine, so I'm not qualified to discuss with you." The monk clasped his hands together. "Little brother, are you here to fight?" Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, the monk said again, "However, what you said makes sense. There's an ancient saying that when 3 people walk together, there must be a teacher. There's something we can learn from everyone." Yi Xian clasped his hands together. "Grandmaster, please forgive me if I offended you just now." The monk said with a smile, "It's fine. Since you can appear here, it means that we are fated." Yi Xian said, "To tell you the truth, I am a disciple of the ancient temple. This time, I came to seek guidance from everyone on how to reach self-release 1. Self-release 1. In the field, the monks looked at each other. In the end, the monk in front of Yi Xian said, "Do you want to reach true self-release 1 or false self-release 1? Yi Xian said solemnly, "There's a distinction between true and false self?" The monk nodded. "Yes. True self-release 1 transcends the great Tao and is not within the Tao. False self-release 1 is still within the Tao. However, 1 is familiar with the Tao and is on the same level as the Tao." Yi Xian asked, "Is there a difference between the 2? The monk nodded slightly. "A world of difference." Yi Xian said, "I want true self-release 1. The monk looked at Yi Xian. "We can't do it." Yi Xian's face darkened. He felt like he was being toyed with. The monk said with a smile, "True self-release 1, truly surpassing the great Tao, this isn't an ordinary level of difficulty. To tell you the truth, none of you here have reached true self-release 1 on the great Tao." Yi Xian frowned. "Why?" The monk said, "Because we can't escape the circle of the great Tao." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Is it very difficult?" The monk smiled bitterly. "What you're saying. Is it very simple in your opinion?" Yi Xian smiled embarrassedly. "Senior, then I can only become false self-release 1? The monk nodded. "You can't say that. Even though there's a world of difference between false self-release 1 and true self-release 1, false self-release 1 can allow you to better understand true self-release 1. This is a process. After you experience this process, it'll be much easier for you to attain true self-release 1 in the future. Yi Xian said in a low voice, then I'll false self-release 1 for now. The monk nodded and was about to speak. Right at this moment, a monk in a kasaya on Yi Xian's right suddenly said, wait. Everyone in the surroundings gazed at the monk when they heard this. The monk gazed at Yi Xian. The karma and fate you carry. Can you walk a little closer? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he walked over to the monk. The monk in the kasaya lightly tapped the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. A moment later, some red threads appeared around Yi Xian, but they disappeared in the blink of an eye. At this moment, the monk in the kasaya retreated. The monk gazed at Yi Xian with disbelief in his eyes. The cause of misfortune. Yi Xian frowned slightly. The cause of misfortune? What's that? The monk stared fixedly at Yi Xian. You carry the cause of misfortune. It's an extremely vicious karmic technique, and someone placed it on you. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Will it bring misfortune to me? The monk spoke in a low voice. Not only will it bring misfortune to you, it will bring misfortune to the people around you as well. It can be said that you'll suffer misfortune for the rest of your life with this cause of misfortune on you. When he spoke up to this point, he seemed to have thought of something, and his brows knit together slightly. Wait. How could you have possibly survived until now? The corners of Yi Xian's eyes twitched. What the hell is that? Meanwhile, the monk took a deep and long glance at Yi Xian, and then he said, Young man, you're not simple at all. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Senior, can this cause of misfortune be removed? The monk shook his head. It can't be removed. Not to mention removing it, I can't even touch it. As he spoke, he gazed at the monk who stood before Yi Xian. Wu Wang, let's not touch this karma. Yi Xian fell silent. Obviously, the monk before him had sensed the karma on him. But the monk was very simple. Yi Xian said with a smile, Guys, goodbye. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Even though he was thick-skinned, he wasn't shameless. At this moment, a monk suddenly said, Hold on. Yi Xian looked at the person who spoke. It was a monk who wore 2 strands of Buddha beads on his head. The monk's face was rough, and his eyes were spirited. He exuded an imposing aura without being angry. Everyone looked at the monk with the Buddha beads, and the monk looked at the monk in the kasaya. Zhui Ming, you said that he has the cause of misfortune on him? The monk in the kasaya nodded, yes. The monk with the Buddha beads smiled and said, Then have you ever thought about the problem of him being able to live until now despite having the cause of misfortune on him? The monk in the kasaya fell silent. The monk with the Buddha beads looked at Yi Xian. He has the cause of misfortune, but he's able to live until now. What does this mean? It means that he might also have great fortune. Zhui Ming frowned slightly. Misfortune, fortune. The monk with the Buddha beads smiled and said, They can coexist. The cause of misfortune is man-made, so naturally, fortune can also be man-made. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian once more. Little friend, if I'm not wrong, you have an expert behind you, right? Yi Xian said seriously, To tell you the truth, I do have an expert behind me. The monk with the Buddha beads looked at Yi Xian. For him to be able to help you resist the cause of misfortune, he's not simple. Yi Xian smiled and did not speak. At this moment, he felt a little upset in his heart. This woman rarely saw him, but he did not know how much she had sacrificed for him. He knew that it was Qing, who had helped him resist the cause of misfortune. But where was she now? At this moment, the nearby monk Wu Wang suddenly said, Since he is here, then it must be fate. The monk with the Buddha beads nodded slightly. If there is fate, then good results will naturally be born. The monk in the kasaya glanced at Yi Xian but did not speak. Wu Wang walked in front of Yi Xian. Little friend, to reach self-release, you must first understand what the Tao is. Do you know what the Tao is? After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, the Tao follows the laws of nature. Wu Wang smiled, that's right, but you need to understand the Tao in more detail. The simplest meaning of the Tao is that all things have their own trajectory. It can also be said to be a change in the movement of things. In the following period of time, the monks took turns to explain to Yi Xian what the Tao was. It had to be said that Yi Xian had gained a lot. At the very least, he had a general understanding of the self-release realm. And the self-release realm was not that mysterious in his heart, it was just like an ordinary realm. However, he also knew that this was not the true self-release realm. He was still curious about the true self-release realm. Just like this, time passed day by day. During this period of time, Yi Xian listened to the preaching of the high monks day and night. About 5 days later, Yi Xian sat down and the monks had already left. This was all they could do. Whether or not he could comprehend himself and reach the self-release realm depended on Yi Xian himself. As for the abbot and Zhiju, they had been guarding outside the hall. Actually, they were somewhat conflicted. They wanted Yi Xian to break through to the self-release realm, but they were also afraid that Yi Xian would break through to the self-release realm. This was because once Yi Xian broke through to the self-release realm, at that time, Yi Xian's threat would be very terrifying. It had to be known that Yi Xian still had the super divine item world prison pagoda. However, they also hoped that Yi Xian would break through to the self-release realm. This way, they would know the whereabouts of the Tao scripture. Tao world. At this time, a major event happened in the Tao world. The Tao world had formed an alliance. The Tao World Alliance. In this alliance, with the Immortal Pavilion at the head, there were over 100 factions gathered. Among them, there were 52 self-release realm experts. 52 self-release realm experts. This lineup was very terrifying. On this day, a mysterious man suddenly came to the Immortal Pavilion. In the hall, the Immortal Pavilion master, Jianghu, looked at the mysterious man in front of him. The mysterious man said something in a low voice. About 15 minutes later, Jianghu clenched his fists, and a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. Fifth Dimension Tendo. Are you sure she did it? The mysterious man took out an item. When he saw that item, the Immortal Pavilion master's pupils suddenly constricted. It's you. P.S. I have to think of ways to cheat monthly votes every day. These days are too difficult. But now, I find that as long as I don't add updates, don't even think about adding votes. No matter how much I cheat, it's useless. Brother, introduce me to a rich woman. I don't want to work hard anymore. I want to rely on my face to make a living. Chapter 1255. Inside the palace, Jianghu was incomparably shocked. He did not expect that the power would actually make a move. It seems like he still underestimated the temptation of the Tao scripture. The mysterious man had already left, but Jianghu was caught in a dilemma. The other party told him that it was the fifth dimension Tendo who made a move. Then came the problem. The fifth dimension Tendo actually had such terrifying strength. It could silently teleport the Pope away. How terrifying was this? And now, the power came to tell him about this matter. It was very simple. The other party wanted him to find trouble with the fifth dimension Tendo. The other party wanted to use him as a tool. Jianghu was silent for a long time, then shook his head and smiled. No rush, I am not in a hurry now. If it was before, he would definitely go frantically to find the fifth dimension Tendo. But now, he realized that this matter cannot be rushed. Everyone wanted the Tao scripture, and whoever was in a hurry would die first. At this moment, Jianghu suddenly felt very relaxed. When he was not too obsessed with the Tao scripture, his whole body relaxed. After the mysterious man left the Immortal Pavilion, he directly turned into a shadow and disappeared into the depths of the starry sky. But not long after, a woman suddenly appeared in front of him. The woman carried a roasted fish that was already half eaten, and there was a fish bone stuck on the corner of her mouth. The person who came was Mu Nyanyan. Seeing Moon Yin, the mysterious man's expression changed. He turned and directly disappeared into the end of the starry sky, but very quickly, he stopped because Moon Yin appeared in front of him again. Moon Yin looked at the mysterious man in front of him and smiled. Continue to run. The mysterious man said in a deep voice, Your Honor, I have no intention to offend you. Moon Yin smiled. It seems like you did not take my words seriously. The mysterious man looked at Moon Yin. Your Honor, our goal is only that Yi Xian, not your honor. Why does your honor have to interfere in this matter? Moon Yin sighed. To be honest, I am interfering in this matter for your own good. The mysterious man frowned. What do you mean? Moon Yin glanced at the mysterious man and shook his head. You should be glad that I'm the one who intervened. If that woman had interfered, she wouldn't have told you not to come, but to kill you all. In all honesty, you should be thanking me. I've indirectly saved your godly kingdom of Shumi. The mysterious man looked at Moon Yin without saying a word. Obviously, he didn't believe it. Moon Yin shook his head and smiled. I've done a good deed, but you still view me as an enemy. It's so hard. With that, she took out a long saber. Come, I'll allow you to run 300 feet first. Without hesitation, the mysterious man turned and ran. He was extremely fast and arrived in front of the Tao world's barrier of the universe in the blink of an eye. However, just as he was about to enter the barrier of the universe, a saber suddenly tore through the sky. Before the mysterious man could react, the saber directly cut his neck. Chi! A bloody head flew into the air. It was incomparably bloody. The mysterious man's eyes were wide open, filled with helplessness and shock. The Supreme Lord's strength was even more terrifying than he had expected. In the distant starry sky, Moon Yin shrugged, put away the saber, and continued to eat the fish. At this time, Ling Er's voice suddenly sounded. They won't take this lying down. Moon Yin smiled. It's all right, they won't dare to act recklessly for the time being. Ling Er asked, what about in the future? Moon Yin said softly, in the future, it's his own business. In front of the Tao world's cosmic barrier, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of the mysterious man's corpse. This person was the godly kingdom of Shumi's prime minister, Fong Tangsher. Fong Tangsher looked at the corpse for a long time before he turned around and saw a white-robed man standing in front of him. The white-robed man's long hair draped over his shoulders, and his hands were behind his back. His expression was calm and dignified. Fong Tangsher asked, Brother Song, what do you think? This person was the famous Supreme Wu of the godly kingdom of Shumi, in charge of the godly kingdom's most elite heaven-inspired army. Wu Ji glanced at the mysterious man's body and said softly, he should be at that level. Upon hearing this, Fong Tangsher fell silent, and his expression became even more solemn. Wu Ji looked into the depths of the starry sky. At this time, Moon Yin, who was grilling fish, suddenly looked up, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Want to fight? Wu Ji didn't waste any time and punched out. With this punch, a fist mark tore through space and blasted straight at Moon Yin. This fist mark contained boundless killing intent, and this killing intent was like a dreadful beast that no one dared to look directly at. Moreover, this fist mark also contained 3 types of Tao laws. Killing Tao law. Fist intent Tao law. Overbearing Tao law. All 3 types of Tao laws had reached their limits. This punch was no longer within the Tao. In the starry sky, Moon Yin put down the grilled fish in her hand. When the fist mark arrived in front of her, she took a step forward, and the space around her directly became illusory. When the fist mark arrived in front of her, she suddenly pointed out with a finger, and this finger directly touched the powerful fist mark. Bang! In an instant, the fist mark vanished without a trace. Everything vanished into thin air. The entire starry sky returned to calm. Wu Ji took a deep and long glance at Moon Yin, and then he said, let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, both he and Fong Tangsher instantly became illusory. The corners of Moon Yin's mouth curled up slightly, You think you can come and go as you please? As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly clenched her right hand from afar. In an instant, Wu Ji and Fang Tangsher's illusory figures actually started to gradually become material. Their expressions changed when they witnessed this scene. Suddenly, Wu Ji withdrew a broken saber and slashed it forward, and a strand of saber energy tore through space and arrived in front of Mu Ninian. However, Mu Ninian merely waved her hand casually, and the saber energy vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, she'd appeared in front of Wu Ji and Fang Tangsher. However, a mysterious force suddenly appeared here. Mu Ninian's brows knit together slightly. She raised her head and saw a tiny flying knife descending straight towards her. Mu Ninian pressed her fingers together and pointed upwards. Bang! The space above her suddenly became illusory. However, the flying knife continued forward like a hot knife through butter. It tore through Mu Ninian's force and instantly arrived above Mu Ninian's head. However, it wasn't able to kill Mu Ninian. The flying knife had stopped a few inches away from Mu Ninian's head. To be more precise, it had been stopped by a strand of sword intent. Sword intent had appeared. Meanwhile, the flying knife suddenly became illusory and vanished. However, Wu Ji and Fang Tangsher had vanished as well. Mu Ninian gazed at the universe barrier in front of her. After a moment of silence, she spoke softly. There really isn't much time left. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. The sixth dimension. At this moment, Yi Xian was still comprehending void escape. Moreover, the abbot and the others were still waiting outside the hall. About 5 days later, Yi Xian, who was sitting cross-legged in the hall, suddenly opened his eyes. All of a sudden. Suddenly, his aura began to grow stronger and stronger. After an unknown amount of time, Yi Xian suddenly stood up. The moment he stood up, the space he was in became illusory. A moment later, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes and a powerful aura swept out from his body. However, this aura was quickly suppressed by a golden light. The power of Buddhist Dharma. At this moment, the 9th floor's voice suddenly sounded. Void escape. Yi Xian nodded. However, it's not the true void escape. The true void escape. Yi Xian furrowed his brows, because he realized that he was still within the path. His release of one was not the true release of one. The 9th floor suddenly said, "You've been taking big steps recently. Be careful not to pull your balls." Yi Xian, the 9th floor continued, "What you need to do now is to stabilize your realm and your body. Although your body is strong, it hasn't reached its limit. To be honest, the Buddhist Dharma in that ancient temple is quite good. You can learn more." Yi Xian nodded. During this period of time, he had also discovered this problem. That was, the Buddhist scriptures were very helpful in stabilizing his realm. Now, he was a bit curious about the Buddhist scriptures in the study room. The ancient temple cared about it so much. That Buddhist scripture must be a good thing. 5-dimensional Tendo. Yi Xian thought of Mu Ninian. It seemed that he had to find a chance to talk to Mu Ninian. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Big sister, can you help me hide my realm?" After a moment of silence, the big sister said, "Yes." Yi Xian asked, "Even those void release realm powerhouses can't see through it. Can I?" The big sister said, "Yes." After saying that, the Tao Law and the pagoda suddenly trembled. Soon, a mysterious power sealed Yi Xian. Soon, his aura was hidden. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Hiding the void release realm is enough." He finally understood. Pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger was the way of the king. If the enemy knew that he was at the void release realm, they would definitely prepare 120% of their strength to deal with him. But if he was still at the origin returning realm shattering realm, they would underestimate him. After a moment, Yi Xian left the hall. As soon as he left the hall, he saw the two abbot. The abbot looked at Yi Xian and was stunned. "You didn't break through?" Yi Xian sighed softly, his expression dim, "Just a bit of luck." The abbot had a strange expression. In his opinion, Yi Xian should be able to reach the void release realm. This fellow was not only thick-skinned, his talent was also very strong. But he did not expect that Yi Xian had not broken through to the void release realm. In slight disbelief, the abbot sized up Yi Xian. From his aura, although Yi Xian's aura was much stronger than before, he was still at the origin returning realm shattering realm. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Actually, just a bit, just a bit." The abbot asked, "What do you mean?" Yi Xian sighed softly, "I've already touched that threshold, but because of my own body, I'm still a bit away from breaking through that critical point." As he spoke, he shook his head and sighed once more, feeling slightly disheartened. The abbot hesitated for a moment and then said, "Don't be discouraged. Since you've already touched that threshold, then reaching the void release realm is only a matter of time. During this period of time, you should stay in the temple and cultivate the Dharma." Yi Xian nodded, "All right." Not long later, the abbot and the others left. Yi Xian was just about to leave when a voice suddenly resounded in his mind. Yi Xian was delighted, and then he vanished on the spot. Chapter 1256. Yi Xian arrived at a starry sky, where he saw Mu Nianyan. When he was below, he received Mu Nianyan's message. Yi Xian walked briskly to Mu Nianyan, smiling, "Sister Nian, you're back." "Sister Nian?" Mu Nianyan smiled faintly, "That's an interesting name." Yi Xian smiled sheepishly, then asked, "Sister Nian, did you go to the Tao world during this time?" Mu Nianyan nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian said seriously, "The study house is in your hands, right?" Mu Nianyan smiled, "Yes. But I can't return it to you now." Yi Xian quickly said, all right. Don't return it to me." This thing was a hot potato in his hands. It was much safer in Mu Nianyan's hands than in his. Mu Nianyan suddenly said, "Come with me." Yi Xian glanced at Mu Nianyan, nodding, "All right." Mu Nianyan walked towards the depths of the starry sky. "Do you know what's above the Tao world?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes, the godly kingdom of Shumi." Mu Nianyan glanced at Yi Xian, "Did those monks tell you about it?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." Mu Nianyan laughed, "Those monks are interesting." Yi Xian said solemnly, "This godly kingdom of Shumi also wants the Tao scripture?" Mu Nianyan nodded, "The Tao scripture has more uses than you think. It should be said that the Tao world's Tao scripture is not complete. If I'm not wrong, the godly kingdom of Shumi also has the Tao scripture from heaven, but both are incomplete." Yi Xian said solemnly, "I heard the Tao scripture has a total of 9 scrolls?" Mu Nianyan smiled, "Yes. I have to say, this is indeed a wonderful book." Yi Xian looked at Mu Nianyan. "Sister Nian, are you not interested in this scripture at all?" Mu Nianyan roared with laughter and said, "I have my own path. Why would I need someone else to guide me?" Yi Xian gave Mu Nianyan a thumbs up. "Sis, you're awesome." Mu Nianyan shook his head, "I'm not powerful at all. For example, I really can't beat the plain-dressed woman." Yi Xian almost fainted when he heard that. Mu Nianyan suddenly laughed. "What else do you know about Tao Yi?" Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, "What kind of place is the realm of extreme bliss?" He was very curious about the pure land of bliss that the ancient temple often talked about. Mu Nianyan said, "The realm of extreme bliss is a place where a group of monks stay. Of course, the monks there are different from here. The monks there have much higher dharma and cultivation than here. They are also much stronger." Saying that, she looked at Yi Xian, "You've become a layman disciple of the ancient temple?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." Mu Nianyan said softly, "The ancient temple is still fine, but the Buddhism in the realm of extreme bliss is not so easy to fool. Of course, now that you have become a layman disciple of the ancient temple, it means that you are very likely to come into contact with that place in the future. If you come into contact with that place, remember, you must be very careful. Those bald donkeys are not simple, especially since they are also experts in karma spells." Yi Xian nodded, "Understood." Mu Nianyan said again, you also have to be careful of a group of people. Yi Xian quickly asked, what kind? Mu Niannian looked at Yi Xian, a transmigrator. Yi Xian frowned slightly, the Milky Way realm? Mu Niannian nodded, that place is a bit special. As far as I know, that place is guarded by a mysterious array and mysterious power. Ordinary people can't step into that place at all. However, they are also trapped in that place and cannot come into contact with the outside world. Of course, this is equivalent to protecting them. Yi Xian was a little puzzled, what do you mean? The corner of Mu Niannian's mouth lifted slightly, the people in that place are actually very weak. In short, if you meet people from that place in the future, just be careful. Of course, there is no need to deliberately pay attention to them. Although they are special, you are even more special. Yi Xian asked, special? How am I special? Mu Niannian laughed, you are special in every way. Yi Xian, Mu Niannian continued, actually, this universe is indeed very big and boundless. There are many unknown existences. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, that abbot also said that there is an ascension platform, which is that whirling world. Sister Nian, do you know that place? Mu Niannian nodded, I know about Dao Yi. Rumor has it that Dao scriptures came from that place. Yi Xian asked, rumor? Mu Niannian rolled her eyes at Yi Xian, do you think that I know everything? Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. Yes. Mu Niannian shook her head, I am not interested in investigating these things. For me, it is fine as long as it does not threaten the fifth dimension. Yi Xian asked again, is there really an underworld? Hearing this, Mu Niannian suddenly frowned and looked at Yi Xian, did that bald donkey also say that? Yi Xian nodded. After a moment of silence, Mu Niannian said, indeed there is. Yi Xian quickly asked, what kind of world is it? Mu Niannian said lightly, a very scary place. Saying that, she pointed at herself, do you think I am powerful? Yi Xian nodded quickly, powerful, very powerful. Mu Niannian looked at Yi Xian, I am not willing to provoke that place. Yi Xian was silent. Obviously, this underworld was very scary. Mu Niannian said again, that place is not simple. I also hope that you do not provoke that place. When the plain-dressed woman was still here, it was fine if you provoked it. But now that she is gone, if you provoke that place, you will be killed. Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. I won't provoke you. Mu Niannian shook her head, my intuition tells me that you will definitely provoke it. Yi Xian was a little puzzled, why? Mu Niannian said, you have the cause of adversity on you. The worse the situation, the easier it is for you to encounter it. It would be fine if you did not know about it, but the problem is that you know about it now. So, my thinking is that you will definitely come into contact with that place, and it will most likely be an evil fate. Yi Xian was speechless. Mu Niannian said softly, you really make me worry. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Niannian, you are so powerful. Do you know who gave me this cause of adversity? Mu Niannian shook her head, I don't know. Yi Xian asked, can you investigate? Mu Niannian looked at Yi Xian, yes. Yi Xian was about to speak when Mu Niannian said, we can investigate, but something bad will happen. Yi Xian frowned, what do you mean? Mu Niannian laughed, it's like a tumor growing on an ordinary person's body. What do you think will happen if it is cut off? Yi Xian said in a low voice, you will die. Mu Niannian nodded, the cause of calamity is similar to this. When we investigated, if we investigate, the cause of adversity may completely erupt. Once it erupts, my intuition tells me that something bad will happen. Yi Xian said in a low voice, that is to say, no matter what I do, I will not be able to change my bad fate, right? Mu Niannian suddenly patted Yi Xian's head, idiot, do you know why you are able to live until now? Yi Xian said in a low voice, because of the plain-dressed woman. Mu Niannian shook her head, it's not just because of her, but also because you are constantly striving to become stronger. I can put it this way, the plain-dressed woman once gave you a chance to choose. If you choose to be ordinary, you will definitely be able to live a rich life, because she can completely guard this universe and ensure your safety for 100 years. However, you chose the martial Tao. Since you have chosen this path, she can only accompany you to walk out of that place. And the martial Tao can only be walked by yourself. At most, she will be your Tao protector. Saying that, she looked at Yi Xian. You are actually constantly changing your fate. It should be said that every decision you make can change your fate. Among all living beings, many people are born into ordinary families, and many people start with a golden key. It can be said that this is very unfair, because some people's ending point is just others' starting point. However, everyone has the ability to change their fate. If your fate is not good, then it is fate that is unfair. But if your fate is not good, then it is your own problem. Yi Xian asked back, why are some people's lives good, and some people's lives bad? Mu Nianyan looked at Yi Xian. When you walk, you might inadvertently step on an ant. Let me ask you, can that ant ask itself why its fate is not good? Yi Xian fell silent. Mu Nianyan softly said, Yi Xian, some people's bad fate is man-made, but many more people's bad fate is completely fate. And fate is uncertain, unknown. You don't know who this unknown will choose. If you are chosen, you can only try to change this fate, but you can't protest. That's not right. If you work hard to change your fate, it is equivalent to protesting. Humans are most afraid of blaming the heavens, feeling that the heavens are unfair. Saying that, she pointed below, look at the countless ants walking under the starry sky, and you can casually take away a life with your foot. Have you ever thought of trampling them to death? No, when you trample them to death, you might not even know that you have trampled them to death. You humans, not only humans, but also all living things, are equivalent to ants in the eyes of certain existences. Do you understand what I mean? Yi Xian nodded, I understand. Mu Nianyan continued, in this fifth dimension calamity, many people will die, but there will also be some people who will survive. Simply put, when you have enough strength, you can change your own fate. Just like me, if I didn't have strength, would have long been captured and imprisoned by others to provide spiritual qi. As for the fifth dimension, it will also become a spiritual qi supply field for others. I really like the saying of humans, constantly strive to become stronger. This is a kind of spirit, and also a kind of culture. However, humans tend to ignore this spirit and culture. Yi Xian looked at Mu Nianyan, Sister Nian, I understand. Mu Nianyan faintly smiled, it's good that you understand. Remember, don't complain that you have a calamity on your body. Nothing is absolute. As long as you use it well, many bad things can become good things. Mentality is very important. Yi Xian said with a smile, I will remember what you said. Mu Nianyan lightly patted Yi Xian's shoulder, then licked her lips. Sister is a bit hungry, go and catch some fish for me. After eating, we will do something big. A very, very big thing. Your sister, I, will go on a killing spree. Yi Xian. P.S. Why are there so few monthly votes? I think, it might also be fate. Chapter 1257. Something big. Yi Xian's expression was a little strange. He didn't ask what it was and went to catch some fish. Soon, Yi Xian caught 2 fish and cooked them for Mu Nianyan. The starry sky was deep and quiet. Yi Xian and Mu Nianyan sat opposite each other. In front of them was a bonfire, and Yi Xian was roasting fish. Under normal circumstances, fire couldn't burn in the starry sky. However, neither of them were ordinary people. Not to mention burning in the starry sky, they could even blow up the starry sky. After a while, Yi Xian picked up a roasted fish and handed it to Mu Nianyan. Big Sister Nian, you said you were going to do something big. What is it? Mu Nianyan licked the roasted fish and said, to the godly kingdom of Shumi. Yi Xian was stunned. Mu Nianyan looked at Yi Xian. Do you dare to go? Yi Xian blinked. Big Sister Nian, are you playing some dirty trick again? Mu Nianyan rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. Am I that kind of person in your heart? Yi Xian smiled. Big Sister Nian is a good person. Mu Nian smiled. I'm going this time to buy some time for you. You can still deal with the Tao world and the ancient temple now, but that's under the condition that the godly kingdom of Shumi doesn't interfere. Yi Xian said solemnly, they've already interfered? Mu Nian nodded. Yi Xian looked at Mu Nian. Big Sister Nian, did you stop them? Mu Nian smiled. I persuaded them to go back. Yi Xian was speechless. Mu Nian continued, however, they won't let it go so easily. So, I want to take you there. Firstly, it's to solve this problem. Because if we don't intimidate them, although they won't do it openly, they will definitely cause trouble behind our backs. The second is to show you the world. See the world. Yi Xian nodded. All right. Needless to say, Huang Xiaolong really wanted to experience this godly kingdom of Shumi for himself. After Mu Nian finished the grilled fish, she looked at Yi Xian and said, the grilled fish is very good. Yi Xian smiled and said, I'll roast them for you often in the future. Mu Nian roared with laughter and said, let's go. To the godly kingdom of Shumi. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, should I explain it to him? Mu Nian shook his head. No, we'll be back soon. As soon as she finished speaking, she brought Yi Xian along and vanished on the spot. It didn't take long for them to arrive at the Tao world. Yi Xian noticed that it wasn't difficult for Mu Nian to ascend the Tao world at all. Moreover, he finally understood why it was so difficult for people from the lower dimensions to ascend the Tao world when he passed through the universe barrier. It was because it was extremely terrifying. The slightest mistake could result in death. Of course, it wasn't a threat to him at all. His current body could only be described as abnormal. Mu Nian was just about to break through the universe barrier when a voice resounded from the side. You're Yi Xian? Yi Xian turned around and saw a young woman standing not too far away from him. The young woman gazed at Yi Xian and blinked. I'm Qin Yaoni. Qin Yaoni. Yi Xian sized her up, and it wasn't long before he was visibly moved. This young woman was actually a Void Origin Realm expert. The young woman smiled and said, I wanted to look for you, but I never expected that you would come here yourself. Yi Xian was a little surprised. You know me? The young woman shook her head. I don't know you, but a big sister asked me to bring you a message. Yi Xian was a little curious. Big sister? The young woman said, it's a big sister wearing a plain dress. A plain dress woman. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, what did she say? Qin Yaoni smiled and said, she said that she's waiting for you above the clouds. You have to work hard. Above the clouds. Yi Xian was silent. He still remembered his agreement with the plain dress woman. Above the clouds. Yi Xian turned to look at the world barrier in front of him. Nian, is she over there? Mu Nian shook her head. No. Yi Xian was about to speak when Mu Nian said, don't ask me where she went. I don't know anyway. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. He really did miss the plain dress woman a little. At this moment, the young woman suddenly smiled and said, are you going over there? Yi Xian collected his thoughts and nodded. Yes. Qin Yaoni shook her head. You can't go over because the universe barrier is very hard. You can't open it. At this moment, Mu Nian suddenly drew a line with his finger. In an instant, the universe barrier cracked. Qin Yaoni was dumbfounded. This, Mu Nian looked at Qin Yaoni. You see, isn't this very simple? Qin Yaoni blinked. This, isn't it a little off? Mu Nian smiled and said, what's wrong? Qin Yaoni walked in front of the universe barrier. At this moment, the universe barrier had automatically closed. Qin Yaoni drew his sword and slashed. Boom! A powerful force blasted Qin Yaoni 10,000 feet away. Yi Xian's expression changed. At this moment, he suddenly realized that this universe barrier was not ordinary. The young woman in front of him was at the self-release realm. 10,000 feet away, Chen Yaoni glanced at her numb arm and then looked at Mu Ninian. Why? Mu Ninian asked seriously, do you want to know why? Chen Yaoni hurriedly nodded. Mu Ninian smiled and said, because you're not strong enough. Chen Yaoni was a little unconvinced. I'm the youngest self-release realm in the history of the Tao world. The corners of Mu Ninian's mouth curled up. Is that so? Then why can't you open this universe barrier? Chen Yaoni hesitated and then said, I didn't eat today. I don't have enough strength. Yi Xian was speechless. Ha ha. Mu Ninian laughed loudly. I didn't eat. Little sister, you're so cute. Let me ask you, do you want to become a true self-release realm? Chen Yaoni looked at Mu Ninian. You can also see that I'm not a true self-release realm? Mu Ninian nodded. Yes. Chen Yaoni hesitated and then said, Sister, do you have a way to let me reach a true self-release realm? Mu Ninian nodded. Yes. Chen Yaoni looked at Mu Ninian. Then can you teach me? Mu Ninian shook her head. I can't. But. She pointed at Yi Xian. But he can. Chen Yaoni glanced at Yi Xian and then shook her head. He hasn't reached self-release realm yet. Mu Ninian smiled and said, he has a Tao scripture. Yi Xian was speechless. Chen Yaoni said, I've heard about it too. She looked at Yi Xian. Do you really have a Tao scripture? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Chen Yaoni blinked. Can you lend it to me to take a look? Yi Xian also blinked. That's very precious. Chen Yaoni said seriously, after I reached self-release realm, I forgot about it. Yi Xian was speechless. Chen Yaoni said again, can you? Yi Xian smiled. I can't open the book room right now and can't get the Tao scripture inside. How about this, you follow me. After I can open the book room and get the Tao scripture, I'll lend it to you. What do you think? Chen Yaoni quickly said, really? Yi Xian said seriously, okay, I'll follow you. Chen Yaoni hurriedly said, okay, I'll follow you. Yi Xian looked at Mu Ninian. Mu Ninian smiled. We're going over there. Are you coming? Chen Yaoni hesitated. Grandpa said that it's very dangerous there. Mu Ninian smiled. Then you don't dare to go. Chen Yaoni snorted coldly. Who doesn't dare to? Let's go. Mu Ninian laughed. Let's go. She pointed with her finger. The universe barrier was cut open. The three of them disappeared into the universe barrier. At this time, the voice from the 9th floor suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. This girl met you two super hoodwinkers, how unfortunate. Yi Xian was speechless. After entering the universe barrier, the three of them were sucked into a vortex by a powerful force. Space vortex. In the vortex, Mu Ninian's expression was calm. She was not affected in the slightest. But Yi Xian and Chen Yaoni were different. Their faces instantly turned pale. Yi Xian did not dare to be careless. He hurriedly urged his Vajra Buddha body. When the Vajra Buddha body appeared, he immediately felt much better. Yi Xian looked at Chen Yaoni. Chen Yaoni was surrounded by an invisible blade qi. The power of the space turbulence was unable to break through her blade qi. This girl is powerful. Yi Xian was shocked. Although this girl was not a true release one, her realm was the same as him. They were both fake release one. Moreover, this girl was at the release one realm. Most importantly, this lass was still young. Mu Ninian also looked at Chen Yaoni. At this time, Yi Xian's voice sounded in her mind. Sister Nian, what do you think of this girl? Mu Ninian smiled, not bad. Not bad. Yi Xian glanced at Mu Ninian, not saying a word. Mu Nianyan continued, talent is important, but temperament is even more important. This girl has not experienced a great calamity. Her temperament are lacking. In the future, there will be a calamity. Yi Xian fell silent. Temperament. That's right, this girl is clearly well protected. She lacks worldly wisdom. At this time, Chen Yaoni suddenly asked, where are we going? Mu Nianyan looked at Chen Yaoni, smiling, to the godly kingdom of Shumi. Do you know of the godly kingdom of Shumi? Chen Yaoni shook her head, I don't know. She hesitated for a moment before asking, can we still go back? Mu Nianyan smiled, yes. Just as Chen Yaoni was about to speak, a powerful force suddenly swept toward them from afar. Yi Xian looked into the distance. In the space turbulence, a figure suddenly broke through the void. It was a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian's group and bellowed, who are you? How dare you trespass into the godly kingdom of Shumi? Could it be? Yi Xian was about to speak when Mu Nianyan suddenly waved her right hand. Boom! Before the middle-aged man could react, his head flew into the air, blood splattering everywhere. Yi Xian and Chen Yaoni were stunned. They looked at Mu Nianyan. Mu Nianyan chuckled, we're here to fight, not to chat. Yi Xian, Chen Yaoni hesitated, then said, big sister, I think before you kill him, you should let him finish. Yi Xian, Mu Nianyan looked at Chen Yaoni, smiling, why? Chen Yaoni glanced at Mu Nianyan, hesitated for a moment, then said, if someone kills me and doesn't let me finish, I'll regret it. Yi Xian. Chapter 1258. Needless to say, Yi Xian was at a loss for words at this moment. This Chen Yaoni's way of thinking was really out of the ordinary. Mu Nianyan also shook his head with a smile, what an adorable little guy. She walked over to Mu Nianyan's side, and then she glanced towards the distance and said, I feel that it's quite dangerous. Yi Xian looked up. He also sensed danger at the moment. Mu Nianyan smiled, someone's coming. Just as her voice fell, a short distance in front of them shook violently, and in the next moment, a middle-aged man appeared in front of them. This person was none other than the godly kingdom of Shumi's prime minister, Feng Tangsher. Feng Tangsher looked at Mu Nianyan, great venerable one. Mu Nianyan smiled, we meet again. Feng Tangsher's solemn voice sounded, great venerable one wants to challenge my godly kingdom of Shumi? The corner of Mu Nianyan's mouth curved upwards, can't I? Feng Tangsher looked at Mu Nianyan, not saying a word. In truth, the godly kingdom of Shumi wasn't afraid of this woman in front of them. However, they didn't want to risk their lives against Mu Nianyan. If this kind of expert disregarded everything and fought the godly kingdom of Shumi, it would be very, very damaging to the godly kingdom of Shumi. At this time, Mu Nianyan suddenly took out Yi Xian's study, smiling, tell His Majesty, this study is in my hands, and inside this study is the Tao scripture. Feng Tangsher looked at Mu Nianyan. At this moment, he couldn't understand Mu Nianyan's meaning. What was she trying to do? Arrogant? Confident? Feng Tangsher's expression grew more solemn. An expert like Mu Nianyan would never be stupid or arrogant. Since she dared to come here, there was only one explanation, she was confident. Mu Nianyan suddenly laughed, didn't you want the Tao scripture? I've brought it to you. Feng Tangsher looked at Mu Nianyan, great venerable one, please wait. With that said, he turned and left. At this time, Mu Nianyan suddenly said, no need. Feng Tangsher looked at Mu Nianyan. Mu Nianyan smiled and said, I'm here to kill, not to negotiate. After saying that, she clenched her right hand at Feng Tangsher. Boom! The space around Feng Tangsher instantly turned illusory. Feng Tangsher's expression changed drastically. He wanted to retreat, but it was still too late. That powerful force trapped him. At this moment, a flying knife suddenly appeared above Mu Nianyan's head. When the flying dagger appeared, Yi Xian and Chen Yaoni's expressions changed drastically. Danger. This was what the two of them were feeling at this moment. Yi Xian's expression was incomparably grave. His intuition told him that his body could not withstand this flying dagger. Mu Nianyan's lips curled into a cold smile. She ignored the flying dagger and clenched her right hand. Boom! That Tang Shi was directly killed. His divine soul was destroyed. Because Fang Tungshi's entire body was erased. At this time, the flying dagger above Mu Nianyan's head stopped, blocked by a wisp of sword intent. Mu Nianyan looked into the distance, snickering, "Do you really think this broken knife of yours can stop me?" Saying so, she snapped her fingers. Boom! The flying dagger shattered into pieces. Mu Nianyan looked into the distance, snickering, "Come, let me see how much your godly kingdom of Shumi is willing to pay to kill me." Saying so, she turned and walked away. Yi Xian and Chen Yaoni hastily followed. Chen Yaoni nudged Yi Xian with his arm, "She's so strong." Yi Xian nodded. It was obvious that Mu Nianyan was stronger than he expected. Just how strong was Mu Nianyan? At this time, a white light suddenly appeared in front of them. Soon, the three of them passed through the white light and arrived above a sea. At first glance, all they could see were tall mountains. Yi Xian looked at Mu Nianyan. Mu Nianyan smiled, "This is the godly kingdom of Shumi, also known as the godly world of Shumi." Yi Xian hesitated. "I heard that the godly kingdom of Shumi's royal family has ancestral blood, is that right?" Mu Nianyan laughed, "Yes, very powerful ancestral blood." Yi Xian hastened to ask, "Compared to my bloodline, which is stronger?" Mu Nianyan winked, "How about, I let you fight it out later?" Yi Xian pondered, "How about, I let you fight it out later?" Mu Nianyan laughed heartily, "Here it comes." Just as her voice fell, a middle-aged man appeared in the sky in front of them. Song Ji. The godly kingdom of Shumi's heaven-inspire army's commander. Song Ji looked at Mu Nianyan, "Don't you think you're going too far?" Mu Nianyan laughed, "You're not convinced? Come and hit me then." Song Ji's eyes narrowed, his right hand clenched into a fist, but at this time, Mu Nianyan punched out, "Scram." His voice was like thunder, shaking heaven and earth. His voice was laced with fist intent. Under this punch, Song Ji's expression changed greatly. He crossed his arms and suddenly pushed them forward. Heaven shaking earth. Just as his voice fell, an illusory 10,000 zhang tall mountain appeared in front of Song Ji. This mountain spanned across heaven and earth like an impenetrable fortress. However, as Mu chanted, the fist arrived, causing the illusory mountain to tremble violently. Then, it cracked open and shattered. Boom! Song Ji retreated 10,000 zhang away in an instant. Directly crushed. Yi Xian glanced at Mu Nianyan, inwardly shocked. "How strong is this Sister Nian?" Chen Yaoni was extremely shocked as well. Unlike Yi Xian, she was shocked inwardly, and her eyes were wide open. At this moment, she wasn't confident anymore. She'd always felt that she was very, very formidable, but now, she suddenly felt that she wasn't so formidable anymore. In the distant sky, Song Ji stared fixedly at Mu Nianyan, and he was extremely shocked as well. The strength of this woman had greatly exceeded his expectations. "I'm not a match for her at all." Song Ji's body gradually became illusory when he thought up to this point. "I'm leaving." The corners of Mu Nianyan's mouth curled up slightly. "You want to leave?" As soon as she finished speaking, she was about to attack. Suddenly, four middle-aged men with sword chests on their backs appeared not too far away from Mu Nianyan. The man with the sword chest in the lead stared at Mu Nianyan. "The Immortal Sword Sect seeks your guidance." As soon as he finished speaking, he pointed with his fingers, "Attack." For sword howls suddenly resounded, and then 4 flying swords suddenly shot into the sky. The flying swords were like 4 shooting stars that slashed down swiftly like bolts of lightning. Yi Xian's expression gradually became solemn when he witnessed this scene. Because all 4 of them had actually attained the unrestrained sword Dao. Their attainments in the sword Dao were actually so high. The 4 flying swords slashed at Mu Niannian from 4 different angles. Needless to say, they were extremely formidable, and they swept through everything in their path. Mu Niannian shook her head. How showy. As soon as she finished speaking, she stomped her right foot lightly against the ground. Bang! In an instant, the 4 swords stopped in midair, and then she spun her hand lightly, slash. As soon as she finished speaking, the 4 swords turned around and slashed at the 4 swordsmen. The expressions of the 4 swordsmen changed drastically when they witnessed this scene, and they were just about to control the 4 flying swords when their speed suddenly rose explosively. Hiss! 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 Before the 4 swordsmen could react, their heads were sent flying. Blood spurted out like a fountain. Blood spurted out like a fountain. Mu Niannian's right hand waved, the 4 flying swords fell in front of Yi Xian. Take them. Yi Xian quickly put away the 4 flying swords. These were good toys, ah. At this time, Mu Niannian looked up at the horizon, a smile on his face. Ruler of Shumi, not coming out to meet me? Or do you want to continue sending people to their deaths? At this time, a silhouette appeared in the sky. It was a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was clad in a white dragon robe, with a dragon crown on his head, exuding an invisible pressure. Not only that, there were golden dragons hovering around him. Yi Xian asked softly, "This is the ruler of the godly kingdom of Shumi?" Mu Niannian nodded, replying with a smile, "Yes." Yi Xian looked at the ruler of the godly kingdom of Shumi. He couldn't sense the other party's aura. Obviously, the other party's strength was above self-release realm. This also meant that Mu Niannian's strength was also above self-release realm. Above self-release realm. Thinking of this, Yi Xian's scalp went numb. This woman had reached above self-release realm, but she was still in the 5th dimension. How could those people from the 5th dimension fight her? Forget about the 5th dimension, even the Tao world couldn't fight her. This elder sister Nian was too abnormal. Yi Xian was shocked, because he had guessed Mu Niannian's strength. In his heart, this Mu Niannian might be at the peak of self-release realm, a true self-release realm, but he didn't expect that the other party was already above self-release realm. In the sky, the ruler of the godly kingdom of Shumi looked at Mu Niannian. "Your Excellency is very arrogant." Mu Niannian smiled. "I'll give you 2 choices. 1, in 3 years, no one from the godly kingdom of Shumi is allowed to step into the Tao world. 2, kill me now. Of course, it's also possible that I'll kill you." The godly kingdom of Shumi's ruler laughed. "Let me experience your Excellency's strength." Mu Niannian nodded. "Fine." Saying so, she opened her palm. "Sword, come." As her voice fell, a sword suddenly flew out from Yi Xian's body, appearing in Mu Niannian's hand in the next moment. Tendo sword. Mu Niannian looked at Yi Xian, smiling. "Watch carefully, see how your elder sister Nian uses a sword." As soon as she finished speaking, she raised her sword and slashed towards the sky. A sword chi pierced through the air. It was a very simple sword chi, flying out. Even Yi Xian couldn't see anything special about it. However, the godly kingdom of Shumi's ruler's face changed. His expression became incomparably solemn. At this time, the godly kingdom of Shumi's ruler suddenly opened his palm, then clenched it. "Defend." As his voice fell, the golden dragon beside him suddenly roared, then turned into a golden light, blocking in front of him. The sword chi arrived. Boom! The golden light shattered, followed by a shrill scream that resounded in the sky. It was the golden dragon's. The golden dragon's voice was mixed with endless pain. As for the godly kingdom of Shumi's ruler himself, he retreated explosively, retreating tens of thousands of li, but the sword chi did not dissipate. As soon as the godly kingdom of Shumi's ruler stopped, his body crumbled, and at the same time, a sword chi appeared a zhang in front of him. The sword chi did not kill the godly kingdom of Shumi's ruler. At this time, countless experts appeared in the surroundings. Among them, there were more than 30 self-release realm experts. Besides them, there were some unknown experts, and more experts were rushing over here. Yi Xian's expression became incomparably solemn. This godly kingdom of Shumi was actually this terrifying. P.S. Asking for votes. Chapter 1259. Yi Xian hastily said, No, Sister Nian, you're here. The experts in the surroundings had extremely strange expressions on their faces as well. Of course, there was even more seriousness in their eyes. The godly kingdom of Shumi's heavenly lord was defeated with a single slash. At this moment, they were extremely shocked. Mu Niannian smiled, ignoring the experts around her. She walked to the godly kingdom of Shumi's heavenly lord. I think we can talk now. What do you say? The godly kingdom of Shumi's heavenly lord looked at Mu Niannian. Talk. In the end, he didn't choose to be stubborn. First, if he chose to be stubborn, he would die. Second, these people might not be able to keep this woman here. This woman was several times stronger than he expected. Hearing the godly kingdom of Shumi's heavenly lord's words, Mu Niannian smiled. All right, my idea is simple. As long as I'm alive, you can't come looking for trouble with this little friend of mine, all right? The godly kingdom of Shumi's heavenly lord glanced at Yi Xian, agreed. Mu Niannian laughed. Good. Then, she looked at Yi Xian. Let's go. Yi Xian was taken aback. They're leaving just like that? Mu Niannian turned and left. Yi Xian and Chen Yaoni quickly followed. At this time, dozens of divine senses suddenly formed a net and enveloped Mu Niannian's group. Mu Niannian looked around. Do you have a death wish? The experts around looked at Mu Niannian without a word. Although there was fear in their eyes, there was no fear. Because there were too many people. The godly kingdom of Shumi's heavenly lords suddenly said, Let them go. Hearing this, the experts around retreated. Mu Niannian turned to look at the godly kingdom of Shumi's heavenly lord, smiling. You might not believe it, but I'm doing this to save you. Because I have a good temper, and I'm reasonable. If it were someone else, you wouldn't be so lucky. Everyone, the godly M to Shumi's heavenly lord glared at Mu Niannian, but at this time, Mu Niannian had already left with Yi Xian's group. Get someone else to do it? Who would replace him? There was a trace of doubt in the godly kingdom's sovereign god's mind. At this time, Songji appeared in front of the godly kingdom of godly M to Shumi. His solemn voice sounded, Prime Minister Fong has been erased. The well of reincarnation cannot detect it. God Lord Shumi's eyes narrowed. She's much stronger than we imagined. Songji said in a deep voice, that Tao scripture. God Lord Shumi said softly, It's fine, we won't take it for now. As he spoke, he raised his head to look at the distant horizon and said in a light voice, If I'm not wrong, then those places have already found out about the appearance of the Tao scripture. I want to see if she can guard the 5 dimensions by herself. Tao scriptures. The people of the Tao world did not understand enough about the Tao scripture, which was actually the source of the martial Tao. In the past, when the heavens sent down the Tao scripture, it was not only the Tao world that sent it down, the godly kingdom of godly M to Shumi also had it. Of course, this was something they found out later on. It was rumored that if one gathered all the pages of the Tao scripture, they could comprehend the true meaning of the martial Tao and become invincible. And the Tao scripture was said to have come from the Ascension platform. Inside the cosmos barrier, Mu Niannian brought Yi Xian and Chen Yaoni as they shuttled back and forth. Mu Niannian looked at Yi Xian. What do you think? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, They're very strong. Mu Niannian smiled. They're stronger than what you've seen. Because just now, there were at least 10 self-release realm experts. Moreover, there are some old monsters who haven't come out yet. Yi Xian, Chen Yaoni suddenly said, Big sister, aren't you afraid? Mu Niannian shook her head and smiled. What's there to be afraid of? Chen Yaoni said with some excitement, You can kill them, right? Mu Niannian laughed heartily. I can kill them, but there's no need. Chen Yaoni was a little puzzled. Why? Mu Niannian blinked. Because I crippled their divine lord with one sword strike. That's enough. Hearing this, Yi Xian understood. He knew why Mu Niannian went to find divine lord Shumi as soon as he appeared in the godly kingdom of Shumi. Killing the chicken to warn the monkey. heavily injuring Divine Lord Shumi with one sword strike, intimidating the surrounding experts. Mu Niannian glanced at Yi Xian, then said, "Do you think they'll give up?" Yi Xian thought about it, then shook his head. Mu Niannian nodded, "They definitely won't give up. I've thought about it, if I'm not wrong, they'll probably contact the other places in the Western Paradise to discuss how to deal with you. If they're cautious, they'll choose to act during the fifth dimension tribulation, because that's the most difficult time for us." Yi Xian asked, "Then what should we do?" Mu Niannian blinked, "That's a question you should be thinking about. In any case, if I can't beat them, I'll just run." Yi Xian, Mu Niannian continued, "In this half a year, you won't have much trouble or problems, but after this half a year, you won't be able to rest for even a moment." Yi Xian fell silent. Mu Niannian softly said, "I can only help you fight for this half a year. In this half a year, do as you see fit." Yi Xian looked at Mu Niannian, "Sister Nian, thank you." Mu Niannian smiled, "What are you thanking me for?" Yi Xian hesitated, then said, "Sister Nian, if they want to act, they'll definitely think of a way to deal with you." Mu Niannian looked at Yi Xian, smiled, "What's the use of dealing with me? I can't beat them, but I can run away, right? But you won't have the chance to run, do you understand what I mean?" Yi Xian nodded, "I understand." Mu Niannian softly said, "Half a year. Remember, you only have half a year. As for what you do in this half a year, that's your business. Don't even think about finding the plain-dressed woman. She's not in the Western Paradise, she should be in a place that even I don't know." Saying this, she looked at Yi Xian, "Even I don't know, do you know what this means?" Yi Xian hesitated, then said, "What does it mean?" Mu Niannian smiled, "It means it's very troublesome." Yi Xian was about to speak, but they'd already left the universe barrier and appeared in the Tao world. Mu Niannian took a deep breath and said, "The taste of the fifth dimension is still better. I have some things to do, so don't come looking for me if there's nothing important during this period of time, and don't come looking for me if there's something, because I'm very busy. In short, take care of yourself." Saying this, she vanished into thin air. On the spot, Yi Xian was silent. Half a year. He only had half a year now. And his enemy wasn't a void escape realm, but above it. But this time was different. This time, Mu Niannian had delayed half a year for him. Half a year. Yi Xian looked up into the sky and said softly, "Half a year, what can I do?" Chen Yaoni suddenly said, "Become stronger. Become stronger." Yi Xian smiled, "Indeed." Saying this, he looked at Chen Yaoni, "Will you come with me to the fifth dimension?" Chen Yaoni hesitated, then said, "I'm afraid grandfather won't let me." Yi Xian blinked, "Don't you want to be as strong as that, sister?" Chen Yaoni blinked, "Are you Tao scripture?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." Chen Yaoni hesitated, then said, "Will you really let me see it?" Yi Xian smiled, "If I can open that study room, I'll definitely let you see it. But I have to remind you, it's very dangerous to go down with me. Moreover, I want you to go down with me because I hope you can help me fight. Of course, if I don't die, what can I do? Open the Tao scripture, I'll definitely share it with you." Chen Yaoni smiled, "You're very frank. I like your frankness. I'll go down with you." Yi Xian laughed, "Let's go." Saying this, he disappeared with Chen Yaoni. Yi Xian didn't directly return to the fifth dimension. Instead, he brought Chen Yaoni to the Demon Path clan. In front of the Demon Path hall, when Imo Zhong saw Yi Xian, he was overjoyed and quickly said, "Son-in-law, you're here?" Yi Xian smiled, "Senior Imo Zhong, I'm not your family's son-in-law." Imo Zhong said in a deep voice, "You are." Yi Xian was speechless. At this time, Imo Zhong suddenly said, "Son-in-law, please follow me." Saying this, he brought Yi Xian and Chen Yaoni to the Demon Path hall. Inside the hall, Yi Xian saw Demon Xiao Dao. Yi Xian walked in front of Demon Xiao Dao and said with a smile, "Are you all right?" Demon Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Very good. What about you?" Yi Xian smiled lightly, very good. Demon Xiao Dao looked at Qin Yaoni, and Yi Xian quickly introduced her. She's Qin Yaoni, we just met. Qin Yaoni. Hearing this, Demon Xiao Dao and Mo Zhong's expressions changed. Demon Xiao Dao looked at Qin Yaoni. You're that Qin Yaoni. Qin Yaoni blinked. You know me? Demon Xiao Dao said in a deep voice, aren't you our Dao world's #1 monster? Qin Yaoni smiled, yes, I'm the Dao world's #1 monster. Yi Xian was speechless. Demon Xiao Dao looked at Qin Yaoni and then looked at Yi Xian. Did you come alone? Yi Xian shook his head. I came with Mu Ninian. She took me to the Meru Kingdom, then, he told him what had happened in the Meru Kingdom. Demon Xiao Dao was silent for a long time before he said, what do you think? Yi Xian smiled bitterly. I only have half a year. What else can I think? Demon Xiao Dao looked at Yi Xian. Why did she give you half a year? Have you thought about this? Yi Xian fell silent. Demon Xiao Dao said softly, no matter what the reason is, you just have to remember that you have to cherish this half a year. You might have to face more things in half a year. Do you understand what I mean? Yi Xian nodded. Understood. Demon Xiao Dao nodded slightly. Deep in her eyes, there was a trace of worry. In a certain part of the 5th dimension, Mu Ninian was walking alone. In her right hand was a small roasted fish. But she didn't eat it. At this time, Mu Ninian coughed. This cough caused her face to turn pale. Ling suddenly said, you're injured. Mu Ninian shook her head. They can't hurt me. It's the cause of disaster. Then, she looked at her right hand. In her right palm, there was a shallow bloodstain. Mu Ninian's mouth curled up. Interesting. You want to kill me so openly. Ling said, is it because you interfered with his matters? Mu Ninian said softly, I bought him half a year, this is the price. Ling said anxiously, you're so powerful. Can't you cut off this cause of disaster? Mu Ninian looked at the light red bloodstain in her hand. I can. But I can't do that. Ling was puzzled. Why? Mu Ninian smiled. If it was before, I would definitely play with this cause of disaster. But now. Sigh, my body can't take it. Moreover, big trouble is coming. I can't deal with this cause of disaster. Then, she looked around and said softly, I don't know how long I can see this beautiful world. Chapter 1260. Yi Xian had returned to the 5-dimensional universe. For him, he had to cherish every day in the future. Half a year. After being enlightened by Demon Xiao Dao, he understood what this half a year meant. Half a year. It was not a lot, but it was not a small amount. Of course, the premise was that he had to make good use of this half a year. Within the 5th Dimension Alliance Palace, Guan Yin was reporting to Yi Xian about the matters of the 5th dimension. After a long time, Yi Xian softly said, we are developing very quickly. In the 5th dimension, there were 5 self-release realm experts. They were Shao Qi, Arrow, and Lanxiu, Zhang Wenxiu, and Senior Sister Lu. What surprised him was that Audiobook and Situ had not reached self-release realm. It was not that they could not reach it, but that they did not want to. Their goal was to truly reach self-release realm. Moreover, although they were not at self-release realm, their battle strength had already surpassed ordinary self-release realm experts. There were already more than 50 half-step self-release realm experts, and there were countless origin-returning realm-shattering realm experts. The current overall strength of the 5th dimension was several times stronger than before. Guan Yin said in a deep voice, from now on, our improvement might slow down. Yi Xian softly said, we should also slow down. Continuing to improve so quickly was not a good thing. The current 5th dimension was already like a seedling being spoiled by excessive enthusiasm. Guan Yin looked at Yi Xian, should we slow down? Yi Xian nodded. Everyone can slow down, but we cannot stop cultivating. During this period of time, everyone should properly stabilize their martial path realm. Guan Yin nodded, understood. Yi Xian looked at Guan Yin and smiled. Lady Guan, our future might not be peaceful. Guan Yin said in a deep voice, I have already made my mental preparations. Yi Xian nodded. During this period of time, you can also properly cultivate. As for the matters of the Fifth Dimension Alliance, you can slowly hand them over to others. Guan Yin nodded, all right. Actually, she needed to stop for a while. Because she had been dealing with everything by herself, this had seriously delayed her cultivation. Otherwise, she would have had a high chance of reaching self-release. After chatting with Guan Yin for a while, Yi Xian left the hall and went to Tendo's pawn shop alone. The pawn shop was completely empty. Yi Xian sat behind the counter and took out a small wooden figurine. Looking at the wooden figurine in his hand, his thoughts gradually drifted away. Yi Ling. Where the hell did she go? It could be said that Yi Ling was the most important person in his life. Initially, Yi Xian's thoughts were very simple. He wanted to live well and let his sister live well. However, later on, he slowly realized that things were not so simple. First was his identity. Thinking of his identity gave him a headache. Prophet. Qing'er. The azure-robed man. There was still another unknown. He was actually so complicated. Although he had always said that he was Yi Xian, he knew that things were not that simple. For example, if not for the plain-dressed woman, he would not be Yi Xian but Yi Qingji. Reincarnation. In the past, he did not believe in the so-called past and present lives. But now, he had no choice but to believe. When people cultivated to a certain level, reversing life and death might be a bit difficult, but interfering with one's own reincarnation was not a problem. As for Yi Ling, he felt that her identity might not be simple. Actually, he had a question in his heart. That was, he had the crazy demon bloodline, but Yi Ling did not. There was also De Guxian. When she left, she said that she was looking for someone, but this time, it was as if she had disappeared from the world. A trace of confusion flashed in Yi Xian's eyes. Just who was he? He had always thought that he was Yi Xian, that it was that simple. But now, he realized that this was just his own wishful thinking. He, Yi Xian, was not just Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian's eyes became more and more confused. Lost. It was impossible for a person's life to be smooth all the time. Many times, it was possible to lose oneself and feel confused about the future. Some people could wake up and walk the road in front of them again, but there were more people who lost themselves. At this moment, he was a little confused because of this problem of karma. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. You are you. The voice from the 9th floor. Yi Xian was slightly stunned. The next moment, a smile gradually appeared on his face. He shook his head and smiled. He had actually made a stupid mistake. If he was not himself, who else could he be? Why should he care too much about the past and present lives? He just had to live according to his own ideas. No matter what the past life was, it was the past life. No matter what the next life was, it was the next life and had nothing to do with him. This life was the most important. Forget about the past life, forget about the next life, live well in the present. At this moment, he suddenly thought of a Buddhist saying that he learned in the ancient temple, how can there be enlightenment? Today, I know that I am who I am. Let it go. This sentence meant to let it go. There was an eminent monk in Buddhism who was too obsessed with enlightenment and lost himself. When he chose to let it go, he directly achieved enlightenment. Not being obsessed with any realm, there is no enlightenment to pursue. Forgetting everything, transcending the mortal realm, breaking through all kinds of delusions. Originally, there was nothing, how could it be stained with dust? This was a Buddhist saying in Buddhist scriptures. When he first heard it, he did not know what it meant. But now, he suddenly understood. The past life was the past life, the next life was the next life, and he, Yi Xian, was this life. It was enough to live well in this life. Why did he care about the past life? Why did he care about the next life? Because whether it was the past life or the next life, that was not him, Yi Xian. That was another Yi Xian. What he needed to do now was to live well in this life. This life was his true self. Thinking of this, Yi Xian's body suddenly surged with a dazzling Buddhist light. Not only that, but the endless power of Buddhist Dharma in his body began to overflow and then revolved around him. Looking at the Buddhist light around him, Yi Xian was a little stunned. What was this? At this moment, the power of Buddhist Dharma suddenly surged toward his brow. Soon, a golden swastika character appeared between his eyebrows. Yi Xian was a little confused. If the abbot of the ancient temple was here, he would definitely be shocked. Because this was one of the realms of Buddhism, spiritual insight. It was to clearly understand oneself and achieve enlightenment in one's heart. This realm was very, very rare in Buddhism. Usually, it only appeared on those eminent monks. Someone as young as Yi Xian was very rare, even in the realm of ultimate bliss. In fact, Yi Xian did not realize that after his spiritual insight, he lost some unknown karma. Some karmic entanglements were not innate, but caused by oneself. It could be said that the karma on his body could only be severed by himself. It was difficult for outsiders to interfere. Yi Xian realized that the power of Buddhist Dharma in his body seemed to have become stronger. As if he thought of something, he immediately activated his Vajra Buddha body. After the appearance of the Vajra Buddha body, he was stunned. This was because the Vajra Buddha body was stronger than before. At this moment, the voice from the 9th floor suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Buddhism is like this. They pay attention to enlightenment, very similar to you swordsmen. I suddenly realized that, kid, you have the potential to become a monk. Why don't you just become a monk? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. If I have Buddha in my heart, so what if I'm not a monk? If I don't have Buddha in my heart, so what if I'm a monk? As soon as his voice fell, the swastika character between his eyebrows suddenly trembled violently. The next moment, a golden light shot out from the Tendo pawn shop and into the sky. At the same time, the power of Buddhist Dharma in Yi Xian's body that was originally silent suddenly swept out like a tidal wave. Boom! The entire boundless underground city was directly enveloped by the power of Buddhist Dharma. Suddenly, the color of the swastika character between Yi Xian's eyebrows deepened. Yi Xian was a little stunned. My power of Buddhist Dharma became stronger again? At this moment, the 9th floor suddenly said, "You're really sick. You're not human at all." Yi Xian, at this moment, a monk suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The person who came was the ancient temple's monk Jianghu. When he saw the swastika character between Yi Xian's eyebrows, he was slightly stunned and then said with a trembling voice, "This is spiritual insight." Yi Xian blinked his eyes. "Master, what's wrong?" Jianghu clasped his hands together. "Young Master Yi, have you achieved Tao validation?" Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "I think so." Jianghu smiled bitterly. "Young Master Yi, you have achieved spiritual insight, but you are too calm." Yi Xian looked at Jianghu. "Master, is spiritual insight very difficult?" Jianghu's smile became even more bitter. "Young Master Yi, in my ancient temple, apart from an ancestor, no one has reached this realm. What do you think?" Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, "The more you care about it, the harder it is." Jianghu was slightly stunned, then bowed respectfully. "Thank you, young Master Yi, for your advice." Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, at this moment, two old monks suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. They were the ancient temple's abbot and the governor elder. The abbot looked at Yi Xian. When he saw the swastika character between Yi Xian's eyebrows, he was stunned. After a moment, he clasped his hands together, his eyes filled with a complicated expression. Spiritual insight. Throughout the history of the ancient temple, only 2 people were able to achieve this realm. He had never expected that Yi Xian had actually achieved it. But how many years had it been since Yi Xian achieved it? What a monster! The governor elder felt extremely complicated in his heart as well. This slippery fellow has actually attained spiritual insight. How can I live with that? After all, once one attains spiritual insight, then cultivating the Dharma would yield twice the results with half the effort. At this moment, the Dharma energy on Yi Xian's body was still growing stronger. The abbot hesitated for a moment, and then said, "Young Master Yi, can you tell me how you attained spiritual insight?" Yi Xian looked at the abbot. "Abbot, you are an eminent monk, and your attainments in the Dharma far surpass mine. However, I feel that there is something wrong with you." The abbot said, "Young Master Yi, please speak." Yi Xian smiled, "You care too much. Just like now, why do you care about this so-called realm? Is the ultimate goal of cultivating the Dharma to attain enlightenment?" The abbot was stunned when he heard this, and the prayer beads in his hands suddenly broke and scattered all over the ground. P.S. What is a monthly ticket? It's dust. All these years, I've been too obsessed with monthly tickets. Now, I've let it go. I don't want a monthly ticket. I don't want a monthly ticket. Chapter 1261. What was the purpose of cultivating Buddhism? This question stumped the abbot. A trace of confusion appeared in the abbot's eyes. What was the purpose of cultivating Buddhism in the first place? It was to cultivate. Learning Buddhism was to become a Buddha. Learning Buddhism was to change oneself. Learning Buddhism was to cultivate one's mind. And he did it. But then it slowly changed. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, "In the Tripitaka Sutra, there is a saying, don't create, don't create, don't create, don't create karma, don't pursue stubbornly." Master, have you done it? The abbot clasped his hands together and shook his head. Yi Xian continued, "Many times, stubbornness is a prison that traps oneself. Letting it go is the same as opening the prison. And now, everyone in the ancient temple is imprisoned by themselves." As he said this, he looked at the abbot and smiled, "Master, forgive me for being blunt, but you are too stubborn about the study and the Tao canon. A senior once told me that the Tao canon can indeed allow one to reach above self-release or even higher, but that is a path given by others. But if others don't give us a path, do we have no path to walk? Our feet are on the body and the path is in the heart, so why do we need others to give us a path?" Hearing this, the abbot looked deeply at Yi Xian and clasped his hands together. "Young Master Yi, I am not as good as you." Stubbornness. At this moment, he understood why Yi Xian was so perceptive. It was not a moment of enlightenment. Yi Xian giving up the study was a kind of realm in itself. No, it should be said that Yi Xian did not care too much about the study, nor did he want to rely on the study to become stronger like everyone else. He did not care, and he was not stubborn. The abbot suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, come with us to the ancient temple to cultivate." How about it? Yi Xian smiled, "I will go, but not now, I still have something to deal with." The abbot clasped his hands together. "Okay, we will wait for young Master Yi in the ancient temple." As he said this, he turned around and left with the governor elder. A moment later, Jianghu also left. At this moment, the ninth floor suddenly said, "Will they give up on the Tao canon?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "I don't know." The ninth house said, "The Buddhist Dharma is very profound, and you should study it. It'll be very beneficial to your cultivation. However, I don't recommend that you delve too deeply into it. It's easy to fall into a demonic trap." Yi Xian nodded. In reality, his understanding of the Buddhist Dharma was only superficial. In terms of understanding of the Buddhist Dharma, he was far inferior to the abbot and the others. However, perhaps it was because of this that he was able to achieve spiritual enlightenment more easily. This was because he had never thought much about the Buddhist sect's Tao proving fruit. Many times, many things, and many people were like the sand in your hand. The tighter you held it, the easier it was to lose it. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and walked out of the pawn shop. Looking at the horizon, Yi Xian took in a deep breath. With a light gesture of his finger, a ray of sword light flew up and disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Unrestrained sword heart. With that epiphany just now, his sword Dao had also improved significantly. It could be said that he could now fight against a self-release realm expert like the Pope without the help of the World Prison Pagoda or the power of his bloodline. After all, he was also a fake self-release realm expert. However, there was a problem. His current enemies were not just self-release realm experts, but those above self-release realm. The godly kingdom of Shumi. He had not forgotten about this place. Mu Niannian had suppressed the godly kingdom of Shumi and bought him half a year of time, half a year. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian turned into a ray of sword light and disappeared. In the following period of time, the fifth dimension completely calmed down because there was no movement from the Dao world. Dao world. At this time, Jianghu's Dao world alliance was growing larger and larger. There were 70 self-release realm experts. It had to be said that this lineup was very terrifying. It could be said that all the self-release realm experts of the Dao world had been gathered by him. Of course, that Dao village was excluded. Although he was becoming stronger, Jianghu was becoming more low-key. This was because he had suffered too many losses in the past. Although he knew that the Dao scripture was in the hands of the fifth dimension's Tendo, Jianghu did not go find Mu Niannian. Since the godly kingdom of Shumi knew that the Dao scripture was in Mu Niannian's hands but did not go steal it, this was enough to prove many things. Moreover, what made him most afraid was that the fifth dimension's Tendo had taken away the book house and the Pope right under their noses. How terrifying was this strength? Thus, he did not dare go find Mu Niannian. Moreover, there was no need to find Mu Niannian. The godly kingdom of Shumi had told him this information because they wanted to use him as a spear. He was not in a hurry right now. In any case, in his opinion, there were many people more anxious than him. In this game, whoever was anxious would suffer. On this day, a woman came to the Immortal Pavilion. This person was the Dao village's Li Qing. Inside the pavilion, Jianghu looked at Li Qing. "Miss, is something the matter?" Li Qing smiled. "Pavilion Master Jiang should know that the book house is not in the hands of my Dao village." Jianghu nodded, "Yes." Li Qing looked at Jianghu, then, "Pavilion Master Jiang, do you know who has the book house?" Jianghu smiled, "In the hands of the fifth dimension's Tendo." Fifth dimension's Tendo. Li Qing frowned. Regarding the fifth dimension's Tendo, they had actually investigated this Tendo. In their investigation, this fifth dimension's Tendo was very low-key, without any sense of existence. As for his strength, they did not investigate too much. How strong could a Tendo be? But now it seemed that they had underestimated this fifth dimension's Tendo. Li Qing looked at Jianghu. "Since Pavilion Master Jiang already knows that the book house is in the hands of the fifth dimension's Tendo, why haven't you made a move?" Jianghu smiled. "If the Dao village wants it, go to the fifth dimension and find her. As for me, I'm not in a hurry." Li Qing smiled. "It seems that this fifth dimension's Tendo is very strong." Jianghu shook his head. "If Miss has something to say, just say it." Li Qing nodded. "Pavilion Master Jiang, my Dao village wants to ally with you." Jianghu was silent. Li Qing continued, "The fifth dimension has already joined forces, the sixth dimension is also secretly helping Yi Xian, and the ancient temple is also protecting Yi Xian. Moreover, as far as I know, the godly kingdom of Shumi has also made a move. Pavilion Master Jiang, I think we can ally, what do you think?" Jianghu was silent. Li Qing continued, "Pavilion Master Jiang should understand that none of us can single-handedly swallow this Dao scripture." Jianghu looked at Li Qing. "We can ally, but we are only allies." The corner of Li Qing's mouth curled up, just as we thought. "Pavilion Master Jiang, if my Dao village has any new news, we will send someone to inform you. If Pavilion Master Jiang has any news, please inform us as well." Jianghu nodded, "Of course." Li Qing nodded, then left. Jianghu looked at the departing Li Qing, deep in thought. No one knew what he was thinking. Somewhere in the starry sky, Yi Xian was flying on his sword. At this moment, he was already in the Tao world. And his goal this time was the prophet's former family. The Yi clan. He had wanted to see the Yi clan for a long time. This was the place where the prophet had stayed. The Yi clan was located in a mountain range. Under the big sister's guidance, Yi Xian came to the depths of the mountain range. After passing through layers of dense forests, he saw an old city. The city was not big, and it was very desolate. Ruins could be seen in the surrounding mountains. It was obvious that this place had been ravaged before. Yi Xian walked into the city. There were countless weeds in the city, and it was incomparably desolate. Yi Xian said softly, "Big sister, is there no one in the Yi clan?" The big sister was silent for a moment, then said, "It should be." Back then, dozens of self-release realm powerhouses gathered at the Yi clan. Actually, Mr. always felt that there was a mastermind behind the scenes. Mastermind behind the scenes? Yi Xian frowned slightly. What do you mean? The big sister said, after Mr. obtained the Tao scripture, no one knew about it. But for some reason, there were rumors that he obtained the Tao scripture. Yi Xian asked, did he say who it was? The big sister said, no. He was just guessing. Actually, now that I think about it, it wasn't just the Tao world powerhouses who participated in the siege of the Yi clan. There should be powerhouses from other worlds too. Yi Xian asked, what do you mean? The big sister said, if it was just a self-release realm powerhouse, Mr. should be able to deal with it. Yi Xian was silent. The big sister said again, that battle was very tragic. Yi Xian looked around and said softly, I can see that. After saying that, he walked into the depths of the city. Inside the city, there were dilapidated walls and weeds everywhere. It was incomparably desolate. This was once the most prosperous place in the Tao world because the Yi clan's ancestor, Yi Lanting, was the #1 powerhouse in the Tao world. At that time, the Yi clan was incomparably glorious. Unfortunately, with Yi Lanting's disappearance, the Yi clan gradually declined. It was not easy for the Yi clan to produce Yi Qingji, but he encountered an unexpected disaster. It had to be said that the Yi clan was still quite miserable. At that moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped in his tracks. Not far in front of him was a dilapidated hall that was covered in weeds and exuded a pungent smell of grass. The reason Yi Xian stopped was that his prison pagoda was reacting. Yi Xian took out the prison pagoda, which vibrated gently as if it was responding to something. Yi Xian said, Big sister? The big sister said softly, there might be something inside. Yi Xian nodded and pointed with his fingers. A wisp of swordlight flew out and the weeds that covered the hall disappeared in an instant. Yi Xian walked toward the dilapidated hall. At that moment, a voice rang out in Yi Xian's mind. Do you really want to go in? It was the 9th floor's voice. Yi Xian frowned slightly. What's wrong? The 9th floor's voice said in a deep voice, Kid, I feel that something is wrong. Yi Xian glanced at the hall and asked, Senior, do you feel something? The 9th floor replied, I just feel that something is wrong. Yi Xian looked at the hall and scanned it with his spiritual consciousness. However, he did not feel anything. Yi Xian thought about it and turned to leave. Since the 9th floor had said that something was wrong, then there was definitely a problem. He did not want to court death. He would not do anything if he could. At that moment, a voice suddenly came from behind him. Since you're here, why don't you come in and have a seat? Chapter 1262. Someone's there. Yi Xian turned to look at the hall, but he could not sense anyone inside. Yi Xian smiled, Big sister, is it your husband? Big sister was silent. Yi Xian frowned, is it really your husband? Big sister said softly, let's go. Obviously, she did not want Yi Xian to enter. At this moment, another voice came from inside, are you afraid of something? Provocation. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, I'm not afraid of anything, but I don't think there's a need to take the risk. There's no benefit, don't you think? Just because he was not afraid didn't mean he would enter. That voice smiled. Do you want benefits? Yi Xian said with a smile, do you? That voice said, is true self-release considered a benefit? Yi Xian was silent. That voice said again, you only have one chance. At this moment, Big Sister suddenly said, let's go. Ninth floor also said, let's go. Don't hesitate. That voice smiled, let's go. Yi Xian smiled, I also want to see the former number one genius of the Tao world. After saying that, he walked towards the hall. Big Sister suddenly sighed, you might regret it. Yi Xian smiled, Big Sister wants me to enter, right? Big Sister was silent. Ninth floor suddenly said, kid, why are you acting on impulse? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, I just want to see the person who schemed against me. As he spoke, he entered the hall. Inside the hall, a long-haired man sat cross-legged. The man sat on the ground, his hair draped over his shoulders, and his head was slightly lowered, so his face could not be seen. He had already guessed who the person in front of him was. Yi Qing knew. At this moment, Big Sister and the other Tao laws suddenly appeared beside Yi Xian. Looking at the long-haired man in the distance, Big Sister and the others were very excited. Obviously, Yi Xian's guess was right. At this moment, the long-haired man said softly, they're all here. Big Sister looked at the long-haired man with a complicated expression. Sir, the long-haired man smiled, I'm just an image. An image. The real prophet had disappeared. The elder sister's expression was extremely complicated. Sir, back then, the long-haired man said with a smile, this is the so-called will of the heavens. Man proposes, God disposes. As he spoke, he faced Yi Xian. Already at self-release? Yi Xian laughed and said, false escape. The long-haired man asked softly, what about her? Yi Xian looked at the long-haired man, are you talking about the plain-dressed woman? The long-haired man nodded. Yi Xian said, let's go. He went to a very, very far place. After a moment of silence, the long-haired man said, I fought her before. Yi Xian said nothing. The long-haired man chuckled. You already know the outcome. Yi Xian was silent. The long-haired man continued, when I chose you at the beginning, I only saw the great karmic luck you possessed, but I didn't see the variables of karma you possessed. That's not right, I already felt it at that time. But I feel that I can do it, feel that I can endure it. As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. Conceit kills. Yi Xian laughed and said, Senior, as far as I know, your character in the fifth dimension is very good. The long-haired man laughed and said, does a person with good character not do bad things? Yi Xian was silent. The long-haired man smiled and said, good people can also do bad things, and bad people can also do good things. Yi Xian laughed and said, that's true. As he spoke, he looked at Big Sister and the others and said, Big Sister and the others didn't let me in just now. Let me guess, they were afraid that you would take over my body? The long-haired man laughed and said, if I wanted to take over your body, how would you resist? As he spoke, he opened his palm and the World Prison Pagoda appeared in his hand. This was created by him, so the World Prison Pagoda naturally chose him. Yi Xian laughed and said, do you know why I dared to come in? The long-haired man said, the plain-dressed woman? Yi Xian shook his head, because I feel that the prophet has disappeared. He has disappeared forever. The long-haired man was silent. Yi Xian continued, as for this Xiao Ta, if you want to take it back, you can take it back at any time. It originally didn't belong to me, Yi Xian, so I won't force it to follow me. As he spoke, he looked at Big Sister and the others and said, you guys as well. I will remember your help, but I have always been clear that you have no obligation to help me, because you don't owe me anything. For Yi Xian, he couldn't take it for granted. Simply put, he couldn't take other people's help for granted. Big Sister and the others really didn't owe Yi Xian anything. Therefore, as he said, if Big Sister and the others really wanted to leave, he definitely wouldn't force them. If others helped him, it was a favor. If they didn't help, it was their duty. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Big Sister and the others looked at him with complicated expressions. At this time, the long-haired man suddenly laughed and said, "Not bad, your attitude is very good. However, if you're really willing to come in, it should be because you have absolute confidence in yourself, right?" Yi Xian asked, "Will you take over my body?" The long-haired man laughed and said, "What do you think?" Yi Xian looked at the long-haired man and said, "When she kills, she definitely won't leave any future troubles." The place suddenly quietened down. After a while, the long-haired man laughed and said, "What a good Yi Xian. You're right, when she kills, she definitely won't leave any future troubles." Just as Yi Xian said, the prophet had really disappeared. The image in front of him wanted to take over his body? Absolutely impossible. Because he wasn't even a soul. Since he wasn't even a soul, how could he take over his body? It could be said that the prophet didn't even have the ability to take over his body. At this time, Yi Xian said again, "Senior, are you waiting for me here or?" The long-haired man shook his head and said, "I'm not waiting for you. To be more precise, I'm waiting for myself." Yi Xian looked at the long-haired man and said, "Senior, is there anything you need my help with?" The long-haired man laughed and said, "Don't you hate me? Back then, I schemed against you." Yi Xian said, "Death is the most important thing." What he meant was that he was already dead. What was the use of hating him? He should think of a way to get some benefits as compensation. That would be more practical. Upon hearing Yi Xian's words, the long-haired man laughed. "Interesting. To be honest, I do have some unfulfilled wishes that I need your help with. Of course, I won't let you help me for nothing." Yi Xian said solemnly, "I won't shirk my duty." Obviously, there were benefits to be had. The long-haired man laughed and said, "When I obtained the Tao scripture back then, I already felt that something was wrong, so I hid some of my clansmen. I hope you can take care of them on my behalf. Don't let them appear in the world. Just take care of them secretly. If there are any good seedlings, you can help me nurture them." Yi Xian nodded. "No problem." The long-haired man said, "The Yi clan's hatred is not your hatred, so I won't ask you to take revenge. However, based on the current situation, you and the Tao world probably can't be reconciled." Yi Xian nodded. Yes. As long as the Tao world did not give up on the Tao scripture, there would be no reconciliation between them. The long-haired man said with a smile, "These are actually small fries." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" The long-haired man shook his head and smiled. "You can experience it yourself in the future. One last thing. Back then, I was just a scholar who wanted to create a fair world. However, I later discovered that this was simply impossible. Although we can't achieve absolute fairness, we can make the world a better place." After saying that, he took out an ancient book and handed it to Yi Xian. "These are some ideas that I wrote back then. Take a look. It will be best if you can use it in the future. If not, you can help me leave it to a fated person. How about that?" Yi Xian glanced at the ancient book. There was no name on it. He took the ancient book and nodded. "Sure." The long-haired man looked at the big sister and the rest and said with a smile, "You can follow him in the future. He can give you a good home." The big sister said in a trembling voice, "Sir." The long-haired man shook his head. "I don't blame anyone. I don't blame him. I don't blame that plain-dressed woman. It was me who started the evil karma. I reaped the consequences of my own actions. It has nothing to do with others." The big sister fell silent. The long-haired man said again, "Also, although I created you, you have your own paths now. There is no need for you to live in the world that I once gave you. Live your own lives well." The big sister nodded slightly. "I understand." The long-haired man said with a smile, if you follow him, it will be dangerous but there will also be opportunities. The big sister hesitated for a moment and said, Sir, do you know about the cause of misfortune on him? The long-haired man glanced at Yi Xian and nodded. I know about Dao Yi. The big sister hurriedly said, do you have a way to help him get rid of that cause of misfortune? The long-haired man fell silent for a long time before shaking his head. I can't. Yi Xian asked. Could Senior do it at his peak? The long-haired man said with a smile, if it was at that time, I could buy some time for you. However, I couldn't get rid of it completely. There was no other way. Even that plain-dressed woman couldn't do it. Because there was no way to force it. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? The long-haired man said with a smile, actually, it shouldn't be called the cause of misfortune. It should be called the effect of misfortune. There is a cause and effect. You have this effect of misfortune. It must be the cause of misfortune that you created. Do you understand what I mean? Yi Xian fell silent. The cause of misfortune. The prophet's meaning was very simple. Cause and effect. It was the cause that he created. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, I haven't done anything in this life. The prophet smiled. You haven't done anything, but haven't I still come to find you? Yi Xian looked at the prophet. The prophet smiled and said, this world is like this. Most of the time, the world is filled with hostility towards you. Even if you don't do anything, or even have a good heart, there might be unexpected disasters. And some evil people have done all kinds of bad things, but they are still living well. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, why is that? The prophet looked at Yi Xian, because the good and evil reincarnation path has collapsed. Yi Xian was a little puzzled, good and evil reincarnation path? The prophet nodded, there is an ancient saying that good will be rewarded and evil will be punished. In the past, there was a very perfect good and evil reincarnation order. Good karma must have good karma, and evil karma must have evil karma. If a person wants to enter reincarnation, it is not controlled by themselves, but according to their good and evil merits when they were alive. The good will be rewarded in the next life, and the evil will be punished in the next life. However, this good and evil Tao has collapsed. The good and evil reincarnation order no longer exists. No, it should be said that it has become very chaotic. Yi Xian frowned slightly, it has become very chaotic? Why? The prophet looked at Yi Xian, because there are evil people who are stronger than good people. The other party has reversed the good and evil karma order. Simply put, someone has broken this good and evil reincarnation path and changed this order. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he asked, is it very difficult? The prophet smiled and said, do you know how strong the plain-dressed woman is? Yi Xian shook his head, I don't know. The prophet said softly, I don't know either. Yi Xian, the prophet said again, but I know one thing about Dao Yi, that is, she can already break the Dao. I followed the evil Dao into reincarnation, but she easily broke the evil Dao reincarnation, forcibly erasing me from this reincarnation. This means that she can already break the Dao, but I don't know to what extent she has reached. Maybe, she can only break the Dao of reincarnation, maybe, she can break all the Dao in the world. P.S. I have been putting on weight recently, lack of exercise. Does anyone have any suggestions? Chapter 1263. In fact, the prophet's heart was also very complicated. When he first felt that Yi Xian had some bad karma, he still chose Yi Xian. It was not because he was arrogant, but because he was confident. He was confident that he could take on Yi Xian's karma and retribution. However, he did not expect that Yi Xian had such a terrifying Tao protector behind him. Only those who could break through the Tao could pose a threat to him. However, this kind of expert almost belonged to the legends. However, he met one. He was very unlucky. But his death was not unjust. This was the result of his own actions. At this time, Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Senior, what does breaking through the Tao mean?" The prophet collected his thoughts and said with a smile, "It means breaking through the Tao." Yi Xian said, "Can you explain in more detail?" The prophet said with a smile, "Breaking through the Tao is very simple. Breaking through the Tao, the person is not in the Tao, and is not bound by the order set by others." Yi Xian thought for a moment and then said, "It sounds very simple." The prophet laughed, "It does sound simple, but to do it is as difficult as ascending to the heavens." Yi Xian looked at the prophet, "Senior, can you do it?" The prophet said with a smile, "I originally had a lot of hope, but, you also know that I was killed later." Yi Xian, the prophet looked at Yi Xian and then said, "Someone helped you alleviate the disaster in your body." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "It should be Nian Nian." The prophet said softly, "Mu Nian Nian." Yi Xian looked at the prophet, "Senior, do you know her?" The prophet nodded slightly, "This is a strange woman. Very strong." Yi Xian asked, "How strong?" The prophet said with a smile, "Abnormally strong." Yi Xian, the prophet said again, "She is really kind. If she had the slightest evil thought, those living beings in the fifth dimension would have been long gone." Yi Xian nodded. "Very kind." The prophet looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "I didn't expect her to help you. When I asked her to help me, she refused." Yi Xian was curious. "What do you want her to help you with?" The prophet shrugged, "Let her help me protect my path, let me smoothly become you." Yi Xian was speechless. The prophet said softly, "She advised me at that time that once I stepped on this path, there would be no way back. At the time, I didn't believe it. It wasn't until I was killed that I understood what she meant. She was the one who saw the farthest. Farther than I've ever seen. Unfortunately, I was a little too confident at that time." Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, "Senior, have you read the scriptures before?" The prophet nodded, "Yes. But it's just a broken page." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "There is no complete Tao scripture in the study room?" The prophet shook his head, "No." As he said that, he looked at Yi Xian. "Although it's only a broken page, it's enough for you. At least for now." Yi Xian was silent for a long time, and said, "Nian Nian said that it's the path given by others." After a moment of silence, the prophet said softly, "I'm not as good as her." Yi Xian looked at the prophet. The prophet laughed self-deprecatingly. "On this point, I'm far inferior to her. She's right. The Tao scripture is the path given to you by others." Yi Xian was silent. The prophet smiled and said, "Are you going to learn from her and walk your own path?" Yi Xian nodded. The prophet smiled and said, "Stupid." Yi Xian looked at the prophet. The prophet chuckled and said, "Why doesn't she need the Tao scripture?" Because she had already walked her own path at that time, so she didn't need the Tao scripture. And you haven't. I see that you've already reached the great realm of free heart. Why do you have an obsession in your heart? Yi Xian bowed slightly. "Senior, please guide me." The prophet smiled and said, "There are many paths leading to the end of the martial path. Some paths were taken by others. We can follow this path because this is someone else's experience. We can learn from it. You don't have to deliberately open up a path for yourself. Of course, if there's no path, you should have the mentality of a five-dimensional Tendo. If there's a path, I'll walk it. If there's no path, I'll walk it myself. Do you understand what I mean?" Yi Xian said softly, "I understand. There's no need to be too obsessed with form." The prophet smiled slightly. "The study room isn't in your hands?" Yi Xian nodded. "It's in Nian Nian's hands." The prophet said softly, "There are some of my works in there. These works are still helpful to you. Other than that, there are 3 other things. The first is this broken page of the Tao scripture. The second is this Buddhist scripture." Yi Xian was a little curious. "Buddhist scripture?" The prophet nodded. It's a very interesting Buddhist scripture. As he spoke, he sized up Yi Xian and said, "You've cultivated the ancient temple's Vajra Buddha body." Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." The prophet said softly, "It seems that you've been infected with Buddhist karma. However, it's not a bad thing. That Buddhist Dharma is indeed worth studying. If you open that study room in the future, you can read that Buddhist scripture. It will be of great help to you." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "I can't open it." The prophet smiled and said, "Then the time is not right." Yi Xian was a little puzzled. "Why?" The prophet looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "In the study room, other than the Tao scriptures and Buddhist scriptures, there is another thing. This thing is very dangerous. If you open it now, you will be in danger." Yi Xian was a little curious. "What divine object?" The prophet smiled and said, "You'll know in the future." Yi Xian, the prophet looked at himself and said with a smile, "I don't have time to chat with you. Don't you want to reach the true release one? I'll help you along the way." There are 50 great Taos, 49 heavenly evolutions, and man escapes one. This is what a remnant page of the Tao scripture says. It means that there are 50 great Taos in the world, but only 49 have been born. It means that Tendo is not complete, and everything has a chance of survival. And release one is this chance of survival. Do you understand what I mean? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "How do I transcend the great Taos and reach release one?" The prophet looked at Yi Xian. "Ask yourself." Yi Xian was stunned. "Ask me?" The prophet nodded. Release one is in the word escape. We are within the great Taos, and we are bound by the great Taos. We cannot resist the rules of the great Taos, at least temporarily. However, we can escape from the great Taos, which is to escape from the great Taos and not be bound by the great Taos. As he said this, he paused and said, "A man is like a cow. If it is led by a rope for too long, one day, even if you don't tie it up, it won't escape." Why is that? Because it is used to being bound. Even if the rope isn't fixed, it won't escape because it feels that it is still tied up. Humans are the same. The rules of the great Taos are like this rope. If you want to understand this, you will find that reaching release one is a very, very simple matter. Yi Xian was silent. His hands slowly clenched. The prophet said, "The so-called fake release one is actually deceiving oneself and others. A fake release one is like a cow that is tied up by a rope, but it tells itself that it isn't tied up. In fact, it is still tied up by that rope. And many fake release one experts always want others to untie the rope for them, but they don't know that they can actually struggle free themselves. Just like Mu Nyenyen once said, if there is no path ahead, why not create one yourself?" Yi Xian was silent. The prophet looked at Yi Xian. "Many times, if you think about things from a different angle, everything will be easily solved. Of course, the premise is that you have enough strength. And the current you already has the strength to take that step. It will depend on whether you can understand it or not." Yi Xian suddenly said, "I understand." The prophet looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, "It's actually not complicated." The prophet smiled and said, "Tell me about it." Yi Xian took a step forward. The sword domain suddenly enveloped the surroundings. The moment the sword domain appeared, his entire person became illusory. At this moment, he gave off a very strange feeling. It was like he was here, but also not like he was here. It was faintly discernible, illusory. The prophet looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian slowly raised his right hand. The space around him surged, and the space in the sword domain began to ripple like water. And his entire person also began to ripple like water. It was very strange. The prophet was silent for a long time before saying softly, "Congratulations." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Many thanks for senior's guidance." The prophet smiled and said, "There are still some flaws." Yi Xian nodded, "I know. He had actually reached Release 1 with the help of the sword domain. However, he was only Release 1 within the sword domain. He used the sword domain to let himself transcend the Great Tao, but strictly speaking, if he did not have the sword domain, he would still be within the Great Tao. Simply put, this was equivalent to cheating to reach Release 1. This was the flaw. However, he could truly reach Release 1, it was just that he lacked strength right now. If he wanted to escape from the Great Tao, he had to face the Great Tao head-on and force himself out of the scope of the Great Tao. This was very, very difficult. He had tried it just now, but his strength was not enough. However, he found that with the help of the sword domain, he could very easily reach Release 1. The sword domain formed its own domain, and after he comprehended it, he could use the sword domain to reach Release 1. However, the flaw was that he could only reach Release 1 within the sword domain and was not bound by the Great Tao. It could be said that it was only a matter of time before he reached true Release 1. The prophet looked at Yi Xian and chuckled, "Your comprehension is very good." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Senior, after I reached Release 1, why is my karma?" The prophet said softly, "Because that is the cause of misfortune. Moreover, as I said before, this might be the cause of misfortune that you planted yourself. Therefore, if you want to rely on yourself to break this cause and effect, it is very, very difficult. Of course, it is not impossible. If you reach the strength of the plain-dressed woman, even the evil karma that you planted yourself can be severed. Just like the plain-dressed woman, even if she destroyed a part of the universe, this is an evil karma, but let me ask you, who can punish her? No one. Do you understand? The so-called not being affected by all karma is because my fist is hard enough. My fist is hard enough, who dares to punish me?" Yi Xian was silent. Chapter 1264. Strength. The reason why the plainly dressed woman was able to avoid all karma was simply because of strength. With enough strength, all karma was just fleeting clouds. In the end, it was a matter of strength. At this moment, the prophet's body gradually turned illusory. Yi Xian looked at the prophet. The prophet smiled. "At first, I was indeed a little unwilling, but after seeing you, I suddenly understood many things. No matter what, live well." With that, his body turned illusory. Big Sister and the rest rushed over. The prophet smiled, "Live well. Only when you are alive can you do more things." With that, he looked at Yi Xian and smiled, "You and I met not because of a good cause, but because of a good effect. I schemed against you, it was my fault. The study room and Xiao Ta can be considered as compensation. We are even, what do you think?" Yi Xian thought about it and nodded, "All right." The prophet smiled, "No other thoughts, just treat them well. Goodbye." With that, he disappeared. Completely gone. Yi Xian realized that something seemed to have disappeared from his body. He looked at himself and knew that it was the prophet's karma. The prophet's karma was decreasing. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian looked at Big Sister and the rest. At this moment, Big Sister and the rest looked sluggish and at a loss. At this moment, they knew that the prophet was really gone. Yi Xian's heart was a little complicated. He did not hate the prophet. As he said, the prophet had been killed. What was there for him to hate? He was just a little emotional. Although he did not have much contact with him, he could see that the prophet was not a heinous person. Of course, he would not think that the prophet was a good person. After all, if not for the plainly dressed woman, there would not be a person named Yi Xian in this world. At this moment, Big Sister suddenly looked at Yi Xian, "Let's go." Yi Xian looked at Big Sister and Big Sister said softly, "Actually, we are already mentally prepared." The prophet schemed against Yi Xian and was killed by the plainly dressed woman. At first, she could not accept it, but now, she was relieved. When the prophet was alive, he always talked about the word reason. It was the prophet who was unreasonable first, so even the prophet himself was not qualified to hate Yi Xian, so what qualifications did they have to hate Yi Xian? Yi Xian said softly, "Let's go." Big sister nodded. Then, she brought all the Tao laws back into the prison pagoda. Yi Xian was about to leave when Big Sister suddenly said, "Have you ever thought about what would happen if Mr. left a strand of his soul here?" Yi Xian laughed. "You want to say that I was in danger just now, because you guys might have helped the prophet take over my body, right?" Big Sister said, "Yes." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, "Big Sister, do you dare?" With that, he smiled and walked out. The eldest sister was silent. Did he dare? She didn't dare. Would the prophet dare? Not to mention a split soul, even a living prophet wouldn't dare. Yi Xian did not leave the Tao world right away. Instead, he found some clansmen of the prophet. Some of the prophet's clansmen lived in a small city called Gu City. It was a very small city with a population of less than 100,000. And the prophet's clansmen were hidden there. Yi Xian used the information given by the prophet to arrive in front of an old house. He knocked lightly on the door, and it suddenly opened. A hunchbacked old man glanced at Yi Xian. "You are?" Yi Xian opened his palm, and the prison pagoda appeared in his hand. When he saw the prison pagoda, the hunchbacked old man was stunned. A moment later, he said with a trembling voice, Young patriarch." With that, he slowly knelt down. Yi Xian helped the hunchbacked old man up. "Let's go in and talk." The hunchbacked old man nodded hurriedly. "All right." As he spoke, he invited Yi Xian into the house. When they were walking towards the hall, Yi Xian suddenly turned his head. Not far to his right, a 10-year-old girl was sitting there. The girl was wearing a green dress. She was sitting on a stone bench and reading a book. She was very focused on her book. Yi Xian was about to retract his gaze when the girl suddenly looked at him. The girl's eyes were very calm, so calm that it was a little abnormal. Yi Xian glanced at the girl and retracted his gaze. Then, he walked into the hall with the hunchbacked old man. After entering the hall, the hunchbacked old man bowed respectfully to Yi Xian and said with a trembling voice, "Young patriarch, you," Yi Xian suddenly said, "No need to be so polite." The hunchbacked old man nodded and was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, "How many clansmen are there?" The hunchbacked old man said in a deep voice, "There are 360 people, 360 people." Yi Xian thought about it and said, "Are they all survivors of the Yi clan?" The hunchbacked old man shook his head. Only a few dozen people survived. Upon hearing this, Yi Xian understood. These people had developed later. The hunchbacked old man suddenly said excitedly, "Young patriarch has returned. Our Yi clan will reappear in the world." Yi Xian shook his head. "The situation in the Tao world is still complicated, so you still need to continue hiding here." The hunchbacked old man hesitated and nodded. "That's true." Yi Xian flicked his finger and a storage ring landed in front of the hunchbacked old man. "These are some resources. Keep them. If you don't have enough, you can contact me at any time in the future." The hunchbacked old man glanced at the storage ring and hurriedly knelt down again. "Thank you, young patriarch." Yi Xian asked again, "Is there anyone particularly talented in the clan?" The hunchbacked old man hesitated and said, "My granddaughter." Yi Xian looked outside the hall. "That little girl?" The hunchbacked old man suddenly knelt down again. "Young patriarch, she is my granddaughter. However, for some unknown reason, she has been unable to cultivate. Please help her, young patriarch." In the world of warriors, not being able to cultivate was absolutely an extremely cruel thing. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "I'll go see her." As soon as he finished speaking, he walked outside and stood in front of the little girl. The hunchbacked old man hurriedly said, "Jiming, quickly kowtow to the young patriarch." The little girl looked at Yi Xian and didn't move. The hunchbacked old man was slightly anxious and wanted to say something. However, Yi Xian suddenly said, "You leave first. I'll talk to her alone." The hunchbacked old man hesitated for a moment and bowed respectfully. He didn't dare go against Yi Xian's orders. After the hunchbacked old man left, Yi Xian looked at the little girl and smiled. You're Yi Jiming? The little girl looked at Yi Xian and said, the cause of misfortune. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. What the hell? This little girl can see the cause of misfortune on me? Needless to say, Yi Xian was extremely shocked. Could I have encountered another reincarnated expert? The little girl suddenly withdrew her gaze and continued reading. Yi Xian glanced at the little girl and said, Who are you? The little girl replied, Yi Jiming. Yi Xian walked over to the little girl and looked at her. Why are you able to see the cause of misfortune on me? Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. You have a lot of questions. Yi Xian. The little girl lowered her head and continued reading. As if she'd thought of something, she looked at Yi Xian. Someone helped you resist the cause of misfortune, but she suffered a backlash. Mu Nian Nian. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, Is it very serious? The little girl replied softly, It depends. Yi Xian frowned. Depends on the situation? The little girl nodded. Yi Xian looked at Yi Jiming. Are you a reincarnated person? The little girl shook her head. No. Yi Xian wanted to ask more, but Yi Jiming suddenly said, Can I follow you? Yi Xian's expression turned strange. Follow me. What's going on? Yi Jiming suddenly asked again, Can I? Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, Why do you want to follow me? Yi Jiming was silent. Yi Xian said, You're very abnormal. Yi Jiming said after a long silence, Then you can leave. Yi Xian did not hesitate and turned to leave. He was a little fearful of this mysterious little girl. Moreover, he was not a compassionate person. This little girl was clearly abnormal. Bring her along? Wouldn't that be asking for trouble? At this moment, Yi Jiming suddenly said, The great Tao has collapsed, the order is in chaos, the Tao scripture from the heavens, the people cultivate on their own. Fortune and misfortune are interdependent, fate, everything is fate, everything is not fate. Yi Xian stopped and turned to Yi Jiming. What do you mean? Yi Jiming smiled. Because the fruit is fixed, the unfinished fruit can change, its impermanence. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Can you say something I can understand? Yi Jiming smiled. This is what the second remnant page of the Tao scripture says, the karma section. Tao scripture. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. You have the second remnant page of the Tao scripture. Yi Jiming nodded. I've read it. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Who are you? Yi Jiming stood up and walked to Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian. Let me follow you, I can help you alleviate this disaster. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, What do you see in me that makes you want to follow me? Yi Jiming shrugged. You're already so miserable, what's there to be afraid of? Yi Xian fell silent. He had to admit that this woman's words made sense. He was already so miserable, what's there to be afraid of? Yi Xian looked at Yi Jiming. Do I have any other benefits if you follow me? Yi Jiming nodded. Yes. I can help you reach the true self-release realm. Yi Xian was puzzled. Then why do you want to follow me? Yi Jiming thought for a moment. To see the other remnant page of the Tao scripture in your study. Of course, after you take out the Tao scripture, I can also show you my remnant page and we can share it. What do you think? Yi Xian fell silent. She wanted to see the remnant page of the Tao scripture. Yi Xian thought for a moment. Can you really help me reach the self-release realm? Yi Jiming nodded. Yes. Yi Xian was about to speak. At this moment, the hunchbacked old man walked over. He glanced at Yi Xian and hesitated. Young patriarch, can you take my granddaughter as your disciple? Yi Xian glanced at Yi Jiming. He shook his head. No, I'm not worthy. The hunchbacked old man. P.S. Monthly votes. This is my obsession. But I've let go of it. Chapter 1265. Hearing Yi Xian's words, the old man's expression changed, thinking that Yi Jiming had offended Yi Xian. He was about to kneel when Yi Jiming suddenly said, "Grandfather, the young clan leader has agreed to accept me as a disciple." Hearing Yi Jiming's words, the old man was stunned, then overjoyed. "Really?" Yi Jiming nodded. The hunchbacked old man hurriedly knelt before Yi Xian. However, halfway through his kneeling, Yi Xian put his fingers together and pulled the hunchbacked old man up with a force. Yi Xian smiled. "I want to take her away and let her cultivate well." The old man hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yes. It's the lass's fortune." Saying so, he looked at Yi Jiming and said gently, "Lass, you must listen to the young clan leader. You must be good, understand?" Yi Jiming nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian left a bottle of elixirs for the old man and left with Yi Jiming. That bottle of elixirs was enough for the old man to break through again. Somewhere in the starry sky, Yi Xian was walking slowly with Yi Jiming by his side. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Miss Yi, who exactly are you?" Yi Jiming looked at Yi Xian. "I am Yi Jiming now." Yi Xian asked, "What about in the past?" Yi Jiming asked back, "What about in the past?" Yi Xian fell silent. Yi Jiming smiled, "I have no intention of harming you. At least, I don't have the ability for now." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, "I met you because of the misfortune seed, right?" Yi Jiming nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian's eyes narrowed. At this moment, he understood. If he met Yi Jiming because of the misfortune seed, it meant that Yi Jiming could threaten him, or in other words, Yi Jiming would bring him trouble. Yi Xian sighed softly. He was a little annoyed. Who was the one who gave him this misfortune seed? Was it really his own fault? At this moment, Yi Jiming suddenly said, "But don't worry, there are two sides to every coin. Our meeting might bring you misfortune, but it could also be a blessing." Yi Xian glanced at Yi Jiming. "I hope it's a good karma and not a bad one." Yi Jiming glanced at Yi Xian's abdomen. "Can I enter your Xiaota?" Yi Xian looked at Yi Jiming. "What else do you know?" Yi Jiming walked up to Yi Xian and placed her finger on Yi Xian's forehead. In that instant, Yi Xian felt his entire body tremble. Then, he saw countless black threads in front of him. Among these black threads, there was a blood-red thread. Apart from that, there were also some green threads among the black threads. Yi Xian looked at Yi Jiming. The latter said calmly, "These are your karmic threads of fate. The black ones are bad, the green ones are good, and the red thread is the misfortune seed." Yi Xian said softly, "You mean to say that I'm a puppet under someone else's control?" Yi Jiming shook her head. "Other than a few people who can sever their own karma, everyone else is bound by the karma Tao. Because as long as you live, your actions will create karma. Just like how you helped the prophet and came to the Yi clan. That's how you met me. There are only two types of people who don't have karma. The first is those who can sever their own karma. The second is those who are dead, because after death, all karma will dissipate." Yi Xian fell silent. Yi Jiming continued, "Living is a kind of cultivation in itself. There are many meanings to life. It all depends on which one you choose." Yi Xian glanced at Yi Jiming. "Miss Yi, you're very mysterious." Yi Jiming said softly, "You're even more mysterious." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Aren't you afraid that I'll bring you misfortune by following me?" Yi Jiming shook her head. "Even if someone dies, you'll die first." Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, the space in front of Yi Xian suddenly split open and a woman walked out. It was Mu Niannian. Seeing Mu Niannian, Yi Xian was stunned. He hurriedly said, "Sister Niannian, why are you here?" Mu Niannian ignored Yi Xian and looked at Yi Jiming not far away. Yi Jiming also looked at Mu Niannian. "You're stronger than I thought." Mu Niannian turned to Yi Xian. "How did you meet her?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before recounting his encounter with the prophet. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian said solemnly, "It can't be the prophet's scheme, right?" Mu Niannian shook her head. "It's not the prophet's scheme." Saying so, she looked at Yi Jiming. "It's her scheme. The prophet gave you a choice. You could choose to help his people, or you could choose not to. But you chose to help." Yi Xian said solemnly, "He knew that I would meet her?" Mu Niannian nodded. Yi Xian asked again, "What if I don't help?" Mu Niannian smiled. "If you don't help, you won't get his final gift." Yi Xian frowned. "Final gift?" Mu Niannian smiled. "You'll know in the future." Yi Xian was speechless. She's keeping me in suspense again. Right at this moment, Mu Niannian suddenly made a grabbing motion with his right hand. This time, an invisible hand directly grabbed onto Yi Jiming's throat. Yi Jiming's expression was calm, but the space around him suddenly trembled as countless mysterious energies spread towards the surroundings. Mu Niannian smirked. "Dark energy. Interesting." Saying so, she waved her left hand and the surrounding dark energy was repelled. Mu Niannian suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "Should I kill her?" Yi Xian looked at Yi Jiming. "Why?" Mu Niannian smiled. "She'll definitely bring you bad things." Yi Xian said, "What will happen if I kill her now?" Mu Niannian smiled. "Then the bad things will come early." Yi Xian shook his head. "The result will be the same." Mu Niannian nodded. "Yes, the moment you met her, you were destined to have a bad ending." Yi Xian looked at Yi Jiming. "She's plotting against me?" Mu Niannian nodded. "It wasn't a coincidence that you met." Yi Jiming suddenly smiled. "Miss Mu, you should have sensed me back in the Dao world. But you didn't kill me." She looked at Yi Xian. "She helped you suppress the godly kingdom of Shumi, but she suffered a backlash. Because she interfered with the cause of misfortune. If you kill me now, you'll suffer another backlash. I think this backlash will be more severe than suppressing the godly kingdom of Shumi." Yi Xian looked at Mu Niannian. Mu Niannian smiled. "It's fine. I'm invincible in the short term." Yi Xian asked, "What about the long term?" Mu Niannian shrugged, "The future is uncertain." Yi Xian walked to Mu Niannian, shaking his head. "Don't kill her." Mu Niannian looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled, "You've bought me half a year, it's enough." "Really? Let me face the rest by myself." Mu Niannian fell silent. Yi Xian smiled, "I'm not afraid of the cause of misfortune. It doesn't matter what the consequences of my actions are, as long as I have a clear conscience." The corner of Mu Niannian's mouth curved, "A clear conscience?" Saying so, she let go of Yi Jiming. Yi Jiming returned to normal, and the dark energy around him disappeared. Mu Niannian looked at Yi Xian, smiling, "Remember what you said today, have a clear conscience." Saying so, she turned and left. Soon, she disappeared into the horizon. Have a clear conscience. At this time, Yi Jiming suddenly said, "These words are easy to say, but it's very difficult to do. Because people are fickle." Yi Xian looked at Yi Jiming, "Nian Nian is afraid of you." Yi Jiming shook his head, "You're wrong. She's not afraid of me, she's afraid that I'll harm you." Yi Xian looked at Yi Jiming, "Miss Yi, will you harm me?" Yi Jiming smiled, not saying anything. Yi Xian suddenly smiled, "Miss Yi, didn't you say you'll help me reach self-release?" Yi Jiming walked to Yi Xian, her finger touching Yi Xian's forehead. In that instant, the stars in front of Yi Xian changed, and soon, countless scenes appeared in his mind. In his mind, powerful experts appeared one after another. These experts were trying to reach self-release, true self-release. And at this moment, he could actually feel the thoughts and state of all these experts. Before, when the prophet helped him, he only reminded him, but now it was different. He could clearly feel how these people reached self-release. Of course, the main reason was because he had already comprehended it. What he lacked was not comprehension, but the process. But now, he could clearly feel the process of those experts reaching self-release. Learning. Just like this, time passed bit by bit, and in the starry sky, Yi Jiming took out an ancient book and read it seriously. At the end of the starry sky, Moon Yinyan walked slowly, a trace of worry in her eyes. Ling suddenly said, "You should have killed her." Moon Yinyan shook her head, "It's already too late. If I had killed her, things would have become even more serious." Ling said solemnly, "If I hadn't killed her, things would have become even more serious." Moon Yinyan shook her head and sighed, "This fellow is truly a devil. Her ability to cause trouble is truly unparalleled. Who can withstand this?" Ling said, "You shouldn't have interfered in his matters from the beginning." Moon Yinyan smiled, "It's already too late." Ling said solemnly, "Let's go. Leave this place, go far away, and don't come back. With your strength, as long as you don't interfere in his matters, that calamity cause can't do anything to you." Moon Yinyan smiled lightly, "People must have something to pursue in life. You know what I pursue." Ling said angrily, "Living is the most important." Moon Yinyan shook her head, "Some things are more important than living." As she spoke, she had already returned to the fifth dimension. Ling said angrily, "Why are you so stubborn?" Moon Yinyan looked around and said softly, "This world gave birth to me, it is my parents, and this place is also my home. If even I give up on it, who will take care of it?" As she spoke, she walked into the distance. "I don't have much time left. I want to choose someone who can treat this universe well." You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.